All set. Yes, we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, President and those on Zoom, I would like to welcome you to the Thursday, April 25th, 2024 meeting of the Bellingham Planning Board. As usual, we have a rather robust agenda. Amy, what's the first item this evening?
We have a public hearing for a citizens petition article.
Need a motion to open the new public hearing? Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to open the public hearing. I'd like to call for the roll and also serve as attendants.
Dennis, aye. Brian, aye.
Bill, aye.
Bill, aye.
Nick, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Nick, can you please read the warrant?
Sure. Citizen petition article. The purpose of the public hearing is to see if the town will vote to amend its zoning bylaws as follows. To add the following definition to the provisions of section 240-32. Warehouse, a building or facility with the primary function to provide for the commercial storage and or distribution of a wide variety of merchandise, goods, and or other products. This shall include those facilities designed to store products in preparation for shipping and where those products are generally not made available for retail sale at the facility. Warehouses shall include those facilities for short or long-term storage, and in this manner shall also include fulfillment or last mile facilities for the short-term storage and distribution of items made available through online or similar sales. The storage or parking of tractor trailers, trucks, or trailers used in moving goods to or from warehouses is also included within this definition. The term warehouses shall not include retail self-storage facilities where members of the public can lease portions of a building for storage of household or personal goods or other items not intended for distribution or sale. Then two, to amend section 240-31, the use regulation table by changing yes to no for warehouses in the industrial zone, thereby making warehouses a prohibited use in all zoning districts within the town of Bellingham.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind those in attendance and on Zoom, this is a citizen's petition. The warrant was not sponsored, nor was it co-sponsored by the Bellingham Planning Board. The Bellingham Planning Board was not part and parcel of the drafting of this warrant, who was not consulted as to its development. I'd like to have the petitioner come up. And the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Steve Goyette, 58 Box Pond Road. And I apologize for my back being to you because what I have to say is equally important to you as I believe it is for the board. So pardon my back. So when I started this petition, I want to first state that it's on the premise that I believe we obviously have had enough warehouses. I believe that they are doing more harm than good. And I believe the infrastructure in North Bellingham as it relates to these warehouses are having a negative effect on our home values. And I'll explain my position. You may or may not agree. That's okay. But I want to explain where I come from with this. First, I want to clarify a couple of things. That was feedback over the past few weeks. First, if this petition goes through, it does not halt development. It will limit the warehouses or stop warehouses and industrial, distribution centers from being built on these parcels. It will not prevent any other type of industrial building. An applicant can still seek approval from the board, submit an application, they can vet and approve or deny as they see fit. The second thing I want to mention is that this, in my opinion, if it goes through, does not cause what I would say is tax Armageddon. I don't believe that it is necessary for more warehouses to go into town to create more tax revenue. I know that tax revenue is important, but I don't believe that this should be the only means to produce tax revenue at the cost of what it's causing right now in North Bellingham and as the town in general. I know other towns, for example, have been able to manage what I would call responsible build out and infrastructure and maintain a favorable tax revenue. Those two, in my opinion, are not mutually exclusive, and I believe the town can do it, and I think we've gone too far with the warehouses. But I want to, first state that I'm not anti-warehouse for the record, and I'm not anti-development. I think warehouses in the right location, done the right way, are extremely valuable and needed. I'm also not anti-development because I know we can't freeze a town in time and stop development. It's important, it's a part of a town. But I believe how we steer that development is important. Now, just as a comparison, I want to use Franklin and Bellingham as a comparison. Franklin developed Forge Industrial Park. They realized that warehouse buildings should be separated from the fabric of the community and not integrated into it. Because the reality is when you try to integrate, it causes issues. When you separate them in an industrial park setting, there's actually an economic benefit beyond the tax revenue. Bellingham, for whatever reason, through no fault of the board, at some point in time decided that industrial parcels would be okay spattered throughout North Bellingham and, for the lack of a better word, integrated into our community. And it's actually, in my opinion, an extension of our neighborhoods. It's not separated. And when we try to do that with warehouses in our community, it's like mixing oil and water. And the reality is that it brings on issues. One of them is community character. And I know that some people might think that that's not a big deal, others do. But when you put warehouses like we have, I think we have 10 of them in North Bellingham, I believe. And I think 8 of them are considered mega warehouses. None of them are in an industrial setting. All of them are throughout residential areas or close to them. But when you put those in those type of settings, it affects the character of the community, number one. Number two, it affects traffic, and I won't go through traffic because we've talked about that ad nauseum. You're tired of hearing it, and we're probably tired of talking about it. But it brings that upon the community. It brings environmental issues on the community, such as noise, air, and ground pollution. And we've talked about ground pollution in the form of urine bottles that we often see along our roadways. It brings in safety issues. Safety issues being, to this day, over on Depot Street, we still have tractor trailers parking on both sides of the street. Except when the police are monitoring it, they're still there. And 2 years ago, I brought this up. Because of that, my son's car was totaled. And just not long ago, there were 2 tractor trailers on the sides of the street blocking a school bus stop. So that kind of stuff is still occurring. And then we talk about curb appeal. What curb appeal is, if you have a house in the north end of town and you're looking to sell it, your value is going to diminish if you're part of in a neighborhood where warehouses are located. It's just fact. It's the cause and effect. And when we look at home values, for example, and I don't know if I clarified this. There was someone in town hall that mentioned that I said our home values were declining because of the warehouses. I never said that. What I did say is that our home values are among the back of the pack of 153 communities in Massachusetts. And I believe that part of the reason that our home values are low compared to others is because of the infrastructure and how we're dealing with it in North Bellingham. So I did say that, and I stand by that. But I looked at home values throughout Massachusetts, and Boston Magazine, for example, did an analysis of 153 communities in eastern Massachusetts. And in 2022, 2023 isn't out yet, but in 2022, Bellingham's home values were the 6th from the bottom. There were 147 communities with higher home values than ours. And the ones that were higher than ours were Townsend, Lowell, Lawrence, Brockton, and Ashby. Everyone else had higher home values. And again, I attribute that to our infrastructure, because if you're going to go into a portion of town and you can look to the left and see a warehouse and you look to the right and you see someone's picture window and you look down and you see associated trash, that overall affects our home values and what people are gonna be looking at to pay for a home within a town. And, you know, again, you may agree or disagree, but I think it has bearing on it. Not the only bearing on home values, but I think our infrastructure has a sizable bearing on it. And in 2021, we were dead last in terms of our home values. So, I don't think that speaks, you know, I don't think it's to our favor, put it that way. I think having lower home values is a function of things that aren't going right in a town and not what is going right. So what I did here, just to show everyone, is that this particular map of Bellingham shows in lighter areas where the lower home values are and the higher home values are. So if you look at the lighter area, that shows where all of the lower home values are in the town of Bellingham. And to no surprise, our lowest home values in town are where we've industrialized in residential areas. That's, to me, that's not a coincidence. It's not a happenstance. It's by design and not a good one, in my opinion. But a byproduct of having some low home values and, you know, dealing with our infrastructure is that also affects our crime rates. Crime rates tend to be higher in areas of communities where home values are lower. And that's just statistically true. And I looked at USA.com, did a study, and they looked at every single town in Massachusetts and their crime rates. And it showed, and I'm going to use Franklin as an example again. Franklin was listed as the 7th safest community in the state, which I think is pretty damn good. Out of 350 some odd communities, they are the 7th safest. But when you take one step into Bellingham, you're going from the 7th safest community to 178. Now, the reason that's eyebrow raising to me is because it's not like we're traveling from, you know, a one area to another over a long distance and we see a gradual rise or decrease in our crime rates. We're going from one border to another, and we're going from 7 to 178. So, in my opinion, I think our infrastructure has a lot to do with that. And I think the infrastructure in North Bellingham with 10 warehouses, I think has hurt us more than people might notice or want to realize or maybe even admit. That's my position. That's why I started this whole thing. Now, I know we have mentioned to the board why we think these warehouses shouldn't go through. And I know the board has given us your reasons why you feel they have. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things you said is that you have a small box to work within. And I don't disagree with that at all. I know you can't just approve or deny something for the sake of, you know, whether you like it or not. I know there's rules and regulations and laws and bylaws that you have to follow, and I'm totally on board with it. My philosophy is a little different in that I think that box is a little bit bigger. But the other thing you had said is the applicant has rights, and I don't disagree with that at all either. But I believe that the 17,000 residents of this town have rights as well. And I think that box that you have to work within should also contain the rights of all of us that live in town. And I think, and I believe, in my opinion, that that's been largely missing based on the approval after approval of warehouse. I'm not even aware of a warehouse that has been denied. If there is, then let me know. I might not be aware of it. But the other thing you had mentioned is that your hands are tied. And you had mentioned your hands are tied because if you disapprove a warehouse, then the applicant can take the town to land court and we could likely lose. And what bothers me about that statement, although it may be true, is that I think a decision as big as a warehouse decision, approving one, should be based on the facts of whether it makes sense or not, and not on speculation on what might happen if you deny it. And again, that's just my opinion on it. I think this should never be made on speculation. And I also believe that we've never been able to test that, because we haven't been able to, there hasn't been a warehouse that's been denied, so how can we test that theory? Unless there's been a denial and someone takes it to land court. I would say based on our arguments that I believe that we would have a good defense inside land court if it was ever taken to one. But again, that's my understanding of why you said these things have to be approved. I will say that the good news is that if this goes through, this unties your hands. And all of the reasons that you said these warehouses have to go through are no longer a factor anymore. And the other thing I think that's a benefit is that it shows the people of the town that when we can't accomplish something through the normal course of business, that there's another means by which we can get this done, and it's firmly by the vote of the people, and not anything within the town board, no offense, but the people will ultimately have a say. So I think this is a good thing for both if it goes through. Now, I have heard that I've heard somewhere between 8 and 12 industrial parcels left in town that would remain. And I've also heard that those parcels might not even be ideal for warehouse. So my comment to that is, if that's the case, then this petition's a no-brainer. Should go through anyway. My retort to this is, if they are compatible with industrial buildings, I mean with warehouses, then we should deny them, because we could essentially almost double the amount of warehouses we have. And I think frankly, we have too many of them. And I think they're hurting us more than they're helping us. And then lastly, what I want to say is this all boils down for me, and I think we'll all agree on this. Whatever the town does, I think it should be to the benefit of the people that live here, because the people are the best part of the town. I moved into this town, well, I moved in as a baby. I moved back out, I moved back in 2017. I built a house on Box Pond Road. The people are the best thing in this town. And I'll tell you why. I mean, when I was building my house and I was driving down Box Pond Road, checking on construction, people didn't even know who I was. And I'd drive down the road and people driving by would give me a big wave, whether they were in their car or walking on foot. I'm sure other neighborhoods in the town are just like that as well. I see on social media every now and then, people just random acts of kindness in Bellingham helping other people. And I'll go to Dunkin' Donuts and the drive-through and Honeydew every now and then, and it's not unusual for the person in front of me to buy my order, just randomly. So now I do it every now and then. So my point to all this is that when things happen that aren't good for the town, like I just described, whether you agree or disagree, ultimately the best part of the town, the people end up moving out. And I've talked to a number of people that said, I've had enough. They haven't moved out because they're retired or a job. They said they've had enough of what's going on, especially in North Bellingham. So they moved out. And we're not always guaranteed that when good people move out of town, that the same people with the same moral fiber move back in. It's just a fact. And statistically, it says that, you know, when people who are most likely to commit crimes move into towns with the lowest home values. And I'm not saying that we're going to get a bunch of criminals in Bellingham, but I'm saying that when people start to move out, there's a good likelihood that we're not going to get the same type of people to move back in. And I think there's a whole series of events that happen. So this is why I started the petition. I'm doing it because I believe it's the right thing for the town. There's no other reason. If I didn't care, I'd be sitting at home. So I hope this goes through. I hope you'll support it. I don't know if you do or not. I don't think anything bad would come of it if we supported it or you supported it. Because I think we should be pumping the brakes on the warehouses right now. We've got 10 of them in a fairly small area of town, and it is affecting a lot of people in town. And maybe, for those of you that live in South Bellingham, you may not see it, obviously, because you're not up here. But I think it's affecting the town more than you may know. And it's the way I described it. So I appreciate your time. Again, I hope it goes through, but ultimately the people will decide, and I'll respect whatever the decision is. I appreciate the time. Thank
Sure,
you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Before we turn it over to the board, I would like to open up to the public. And I would like to ask, that we put somewhat of a time limit on this. We have a rather robust agenda tonight. I would ask that if the same comment has been raised, 2 or 3 times, please don't repeat the same comment. Please, try to rotate who asked the questions, so everyone has an opportunity to ask questions. The intent tonight is to look forward based on the warrant that has been presented to us this evening. At the conclusion of the public comment, those proponents and opponents of it, we will ask questions ourselves and then make a decision. So we'd like the first person to ask a question. State your name for the record, please.
Don Martinez, 334 Maple Street. I just wanted to say that what is being proposed to the town is not unprecedented in this town. There is, in our zoning bylaws, there was a moratorium, a similar moratorium put on power plants several years ago. So we had the first power plant, and then when the second power plant came up for town approval, they had the forethought, the zoning and planning in the town, to let's put a moratorium, no more power plants, because there was concern because of the way the town was broken up, the zoning that was done 30+ years ago. Whomever was part of that process, the town approved it, of course. They were fearful that there would be more power plants. So they said no more power plants. So this isn't unprecedented. What this is an article at town meeting that gives the voters the right to say no more warehouses. Not no more retail, not no more large retail with a large storage facility in the back room, It's not saying that. What it's saying is no more mega warehouses that would be placed in a residential area, because the way the zoning is spot zoning in this town, it really has created quite chaos. Now, we talk about increased taxes, two more points. So yes, we're getting some great tax revenue, but at the same time, we're turning the tax revenue to spending. We got to think about $15 million worth of road work that needs to be done in town of Bellingham. A lot of road work has been done. But, part of that is the large tractor trailers, all of the increased traffic, all of that work. So you think about it, okay, it generates tax, but we're spending it as quickly as it comes in. Right? So there's got to be a point when the town says no more. This town, okay, needs more than anything. We talk about crime. I'm not going to get into crime because the police chief's not here. What this town really needs is a fire station in the north, a fire station in the south, because we're an 11-mile long road, and our ambulance calls, our fire calls have doubled and tripled in the last 10 years. So what we really need is not more warehouses. We need a fire station in the north and a fire station in the south for public safety. We don't need more tractor trailers. We don't need more 50-bay warehouses. And that's what this article's for. It's to give the town, the people in this town, the right to say no more. Now, for the planning board, they sit here hours and hours and hours on end, listening to an applicant. And most of the time, their hands are tied. And they do the best job they possibly can to make sure that, everything's mitigated to the best of their ability and working with the developer. They just can't say no. It's not that easy. It would take a lot to say no, and it would take us through court a whole bit. But the beauty of this article, it gives the town the ability to say no. We take that pressure off of the planning board, and the zoning board, and the police, and the fire. No more warehouses, that's what we're saying. No more mega warehouses. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Next person. Anyone else? Mr. Hill.
Ken Hamway, 39 Weathersfield Road. Mr. Martinez and Mr. Goyette are absolutely right. And you've always said it. Every time I've said, why can't you say no? On a lot of these projects, and I've been to more of these meetings than I care to admit to. And you always tell me, our hands are tied. But now you've got the keys to the handcuffs. Okay, it's wonderful. The pressure's off. Now, I got another thing to say. Chief Miller's here tonight, our fire chief. When June 4 rolls around, you're gonna have a ballot question when you go to the town election. And it's gonna ask you to raise taxes with a Prop 2.5 override, because he needs 6 EMTs to complete full shifts. Now, I don't know why that wasn't done during the budget process, but I'll tell you one thing that's contributed to this problem that he's faced with. Runaway growth causes a strain on public safety. You can't deny it. And this town, I've been here 52 years, and it was an idyllic, beautiful town, but I expected growth. And it came, and it came, and it was gradual, but now it is damn out of control. Okay, and Mr. Miller, don't blame him for this 2.5 override. He's an honorable chief. Okay, but when you get to June 4 on that ballot, you're gonna be asked to, help the fire department make the calls to your place quicker. And it could save lives. But the more runaway growth you have, the more pressure on the police and fire departments. Enough said.
Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom?
We have it.
I'm sorry, I didn't see them. Yes, sir.
I'm James Holmes, 175 North Main Street. We moved into this town 39 years ago, small town. We came from New Jersey. And it fit our requirements of what we were looking for, close to this, close to that. There was one traffic light in town, one.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All of a sudden, I don't know how many traffic lights you got right now, but I'll give you an example on what I'm concerned about more than anything. It's that the structure to get in and out of town. The roads are horrible.
What's the name of that street going into,
Hartford Avenue. Okay. I was in Milford yesterday, coming home around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There was a line to make an entrance, okay, to get off onto that street, a line. It took me 22 minutes to get past Home Depot. 22 minutes. Now, I know we're talking about, and there's some discussions, and I was here for a meeting about a warehouse that wanted to be put down behind my house, behind Home Depot. Okay, the largest warehouse to be put in this plant is 750,000 square feet. Okay, on top of that, the roads all have to be widened. They're going to be putting in new lanes and everything else in order to do that. These roads are a mess. There's accidents on the top of Hartford Avenue and 126 on a regular basis. People can't get out of their driveways sometimes. And the road noise, I have a pothole in front of my house. It took me 4 years to get somebody to put a hole to cover it up right at the end of my driveway. And those are the types of things that, the things that brought me here are now becoming the things that want me to get the hell out of here. It's got nothing to do with retiring. It's got nothing to do with having to get to downsize. It's got nothing to do close to my children because they live in town as well. Okay, the whole effect of this town has changed dramatically when you have tractor trailers driving past your house every 5 minutes. They rip up the roads, they don't stop, they don't think about anybody else that's on the road. And then you have the traffic lights, where it takes 6 traffic lights to get through the center of town on the end of the day or in the morning of the day. And I know that it's a problem for you, for everybody, but for somebody who used to commute 55 miles to work every day, okay, that's half the time just to get to where my office is. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And all I can think about right now is if that warehouse gets built, and I don't know what the status is on it, and I made my complaints to the board back when it first came up. But having 50-foot trailers trying to get into the Home Depot parking lot to get back where the warehouse is gonna get built just doesn't make any freaking sense. You can't get off it. On the north side of it, as it is, I have problems getting out, coming down, going down to the YMCA, okay? Because there's tractors, trailers coming in on that exit every time I come in here. It's what's happening to the town and what has happened to the town and what continues to bring down the town is why this should get passed.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Anyone else on Zoom?
Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak?
Cool.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Kohler. I have a question for the board. When it comes to you, could you make some comments to the remaining infrastructure capacity of the town? Water, sewer, fire. See where we are at the limits of the current capacity. Because I'm hearing that sewer is at its limit, public sewer.
We've done the same thing. I'll get to that in a minute.
Thank you.
Anyone else? In regards to water. Chief, I'm gonna turn to you. I think I may know the answer. But we are limited, although we're in an aquifer. We're limited by the number of water we can pump in the town.
Yeah.
By the state on a daily basis.
I cannot answer that. That's go through Jesse. Jesse would have that answer.
I think Jesse can answer that better.
Mr.
But
Chairman.
my understanding is we have limitations per day on how much we can pump. We have
Mr.
a
Chairman,
select
Hannah
person
Brown,
here.
Bellingham Board of Selectmen, and you're right, we are limited. We sit on aquifers. We have a lot of water. Our problem is the state requires and gives you a limit as to how much you're allowed to pump out. We could pump out as much as we want if the state didn't limit it, but they limit what we can pump out of our wells. So that's a problem.
Theoretically, we could add more pumping stations.
Doesn't matter.
We would still be limited
We're still
in
limited.
how much we could.
They set the tone to what you're allowed to do.
What percentage of that limit are we pumping daily
Ugh.
at the moment?
I don't know. That changes
DPW has that.
randomly. DPW has that. They also have the, if there's a surplus, either up north or down south with regards to sewage, they would have that with regards to public sewage. We can work to try to get those answers by next Wednesday. I think Jesse may be out.
Jesse,
I think
Jesse's out.
the action of the board is to simply support, take no action or
Correct.
deny. We can't come back with information.
No, I'm not
because
saying that it's
it-
that.
That's tonight,
town
you
could
have
have-
to
The
decide.
town could have an answer for that. I think, anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just one more thing. As
Sure.
far as the sewer goes, I believe that we are at capacity for the Charles River watershed. I believe we still have capacity in the Woonsocket treatment facility. But I know we were at just about the end for the Charles River watershed.
And I believe we're coming close to reaching capacity
I believe we are.
down south, but I don't have those figures. That's why I don't feel comfortable answering them. I do know what the select person said is absolutely true in regards to the ability to pump water in our sewer capacity. We're reached the end of what we can do.
So one last question, if I may,
Sure.
on that. if we're at those near capacity limits, will that affect development of any kind?
I wouldn't assume it would.
Thank you. To the board, we have, three options tonight. Go ahead. Amy.
At this point, if you had the comments from the public and you've had the comments from Zoom,
I would like to
it's,
close.
you have to
close the
make a
public
motion to
hearing.
close the hearing and make your determination to either support, take no action, or deny. That's,
We can also-
but you will discuss it, but at that point, the public can't comment once you close it. So if there's more comments before we go to that point, just make
Does
sure
anyone
that
have a
we're.
last question before we close the
I
public?
just have one quick question.
Yes, sir.
If Brian Hall, 34 High Street, whatever your decision is, can we, I would ask that, I would like a reason why you made that decision.
So
Is that a reasonable request?
What's gonna happen is they're gonna either decide to support, take no action,
I got
or
that.
deny. That goes basically to the vote next Wednesday. And if anybody, the moderator asks, what was the planning board's decision? It's either they supported it, but they don't have to give a reason if they just want to say they do or don't. They don't have to justify it. but-
Respectfully, I
Yes.
understand that completely. I'm asking that they do, because if they do deny it or don't get behind it, I would want to know why. If they're neutral, I think we'd all want to know why. And if they support it, I'd like to know why too.
And that's up to them,
Reasonable request. Actually.
up to you.
I entertain a motion to, end the public hearing.
So I have some questions.
We'll get to ask the public.
Right, but I have questions for the proposed, the applicant.
That's outside, we can ask the questions from the, once the public hearing is closed.
You can do it before the hearing's
Right,
closed,
so
right now.
Okay,
Yes.
you want to go ahead?
Steve, can I ask you a couple of
Yes.
mechanical questions about the proposal? Can you tell me, how did you, develop this language? How did you end up with this specific language?
I consulted, an attorney, and the attorney actually was a former attorney here in Bellingham. And he developed the language based on what we were looking to do.
Okay.
So he wrote that. That was not my language. I'm not talented enough to write it that way.
Do you have an opinion on what might happen to projects that haven't been permitted, but are in the process of being permitted? What happens to those projects?
My understanding from speaking with the attorney is that they would be subject to this moratorium if they were not approved yet. That's my understanding from Jay, the attorney.
I need to interject for a moment. I'm just heard a new term for the first time this evening.
With that?
Moratorium.
Okay.
Well,
Well, moratorium technically means you're stopping it. We intend of bringing it back.
okay,
That's a
Well, then I-
moratorium.
then thank you for correcting.
I just want to clarify for the audience.
I appreciate that.
Your intent is to stop it permanently.
Correct.
Okay, I just didn't want people to misunderstood
No, appreciate that.
what a moratorium is. Excuse me for interrupting.
What about permitted projects that haven't started construction?
They've been approved by the board.
Right.
My understanding is that they would continue.
They
My understanding, because they've already been approved by the board.
All right. And then in terms of,
Well, by the planning board gives their approval to the project, to the applicant. My understanding is that once that approval is given, that, that would continue. That's my understanding. Now, if you want to be certain, I can certainly consult with Jay and his understanding, or if you want to, consult with him or town council as well. That's my understanding.
did you talk to town council?
I have not. What I was told was to have the language written and it would be vetted by town council.
Okay. Did you talk to town planner or a conservation agent?
No.
DPW,
No,
building inspector?
I did talk to Tim, yeah.
Did he help draft part of the
Oh,
language?
no, there was no input by anybody in the town with regard to the language except Jay.
Um. I had a question about the part of the language that reads. This is a third of the way down. It says the storage or parking of tractor trailers, trucks, or trailers used in moving goods to or from warehouses is also included within this definition, meaning the warehouse definition that could be excluded under the industrial division. If I'm a manufacturer and I own trucks, tractor trailers, and I store them at my facility, those trucks and tractor trailers travel to warehouses and they come back. By the plain reading of that sentence, would that exclude them from of manufacturing them because they have a storage component?
No, manufacturing is not part of this petition. If it's a manufacturing, building that obviously would have trucks involved, then that would not be included in this petition.
But doesn't it literally say that, the storage or parking of trailer?
Well, because you're talking about, I'm sorry.
The literal meaning of this is the storage or parking of tractor trailers, trucks or trailers used in moving goods to or from warehouses is also included within this definition. So
Well-
the literal meaning of that is anyone that has trucks at their facility that goes to and from a warehouse would trigger this and would be prohibited.
Well, I don't view it that way. The way I read that language is that if it's storage of vehicles, we're not talking, there could be a facility that stores, 100 tractor trailers and they're used, to move to and from warehouses. That's how I read it. It's the whole language is supposed to apply to not having tractor trailers either in warehouse settings, distribution settings, or in a parking lot of 100 of them just waiting to be moving back and forth to other warehouses. That's my interpretation of it.
Okay.
So in essence, you would be outlawing a transportation company from coming into town if they had tractor trailers.
Well, I don't know if I say outlawing it.
Well, you'd be prohibiting it.
Yeah, I mean, if a transportation company comes in and operates a large building similar to the warehouse or distribution center and has tractor trailers that operate in the same way with the same amount, with the same type of movement, then absolutely, this is the whole idea of what we're trying to do, to stop all of these tractor trailers and the effects that they have on the town. So if it was strictly a transportation company that had 50 bays, then I would think that would fall under that.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I think there is a use that's called transportation hub. And I don't believe that would necessarily be precluded under, at least with this language, or there would be some inconsistency, right?
So you're saying if something was,
I'm trying to find it right now, but I believe that within our zoning bylaws, there is a use called transportation hub. What does that mean?
I don't know, I mean, someone would have to tell me where the transportation hub is,
It's a DC.
Right, but I would think that what you're talking or what you're hoping to exclude, it also be a transportation hub.
If I knew what a transportation hub was, I could answer that. But I don't know what the definition of what a transportation hub is.
Mr. Chair? Could I interject on that? Tim Icardi, building inspector.
Yes.
So there's a transportation terminal use, and that is only allowed in the industrial zone. It sounds like that would be the category that you're talking about.
Thank you, Tim. Yes.
Yep.
Transportation terminal. That would be allowed. And it's not being excluded in this.
Well, would that fall under, if it, like a distribution center?
That's what a transportation, we're talking about, we're splitting hairs here. We all know what we're talking about.
So I completely, and don't get me wrong, so I don't necessarily disagree with the end result of this proposal. I think that we have, as long as I've been on the planning board, has been desperately seeking ways to realign our zoning, which was passed in the seventies, to reflect the current infrastructure in our town. And when they put 495 smack dab in the middle of Bellingham, there was an obvious result of what's going to happen. And if you look at where industrial zoning is, it's all around 495. It's about down by Depot Street. So it was the people of Bellingham in the seventies, when they adopted zoning, was desperate for development. And attempts to change zoning has not gone well at town meeting. So my questions aren't necessarily that and I appreciate your effort, I do. We need more people to get involved and to get people involved and come to town meeting. That's not my intent. I live in a world, I'm a lawyer, I live in a world where words matter, definitions matter, and phrasing matters. And where there's ambiguity, there results in litigation, it results in confusion, it results in higher costs. And like, I've been a member of the bylaw review committee and the master planning committee, all of that stuff. And we spend hours and hours and hours, months and months and months, making sure the words that we use have the intended consequence as opposed to the unintended consequence. And when we have a zoning change that we look at, the board is sponsored, we have a subcommittee that looks at those. And we bring in stakeholders from the community. We bring in the police, the DPW, the building inspector, the zoning enforcement, people with expertise that the board doesn't have. And we try to look at it from all different angles to make sure that we only get the intended results. And my concern is, and it's not that I disagree with the results. My concern is that process hasn't happened. Right? We haven't had stakeholders weigh in and talk about the consequences and the unintended consequences. And is the language tight enough to survive legal challenges? And does it expose the town to litigation and confusion and higher costs? So that's why I was trying to get at what's been done to vet this, to make sure that we're getting what we're buying, and that's my concern. And we talked about aligning our infrastructure and water usage and sewer capacity. And if you're talking about that stuff, the unpopular fact is warehouses have almost zero impact to water and sewer. Right? They impact traffic, right? But the reality is, I'm not defending warehouses. I'm not a fan of a warehouse. But tractor trailers leave the facility at 4 a.m. They come back at 3. They miss the rush hour for the most part. It's not always the case, but the traffic engineers that have been before us will tell us that. So if we're looking at all that, and we want to be true to what our goal is, I think we really need to really vet this and really look at it. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but going into something without understanding all of the options, I'm just too cautious, I think.
Well, if I may, it's what I had mentioned during my presentation had nothing to do with water, although I get where it's coming from. So I won't relitigate what I just went over. But we're faced with warehouses, and this petition deals directly with warehouses and distribution centers. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I think if we get down to the weeds, then we can look at this even further and say, what if, and then another what if, and another what if. I mean, we're talking warehouses and distribution centers. So I'm not sure what else we really need to do, and it's unfortunate because this petition has been out for a while. And here we are 7 days before the vote, and, and there's questions from the board. I would have thought, and I could be wrong, that this would have been looked at in advance. And if you thought that there would be some problems 7 days before a vote, that we would be notified before that and say, hey, heads up, there might be a little something we want some clarification on.
So we can't do that, right? So you're before us. We can't reach out to an applicant offline and say, hey, here's our questions. It's incumbent upon the person that is presenting something to us to have vetted it out. And going in the weeds is exactly what happens whenever a law is passed, and this is, a bylaw is a law. You go in the weeds because that's where the lawyers live. That's where the engineers find loopholes, and that's where you get unintended consequences. And again, I'm not defending warehouses, but we're really not even, we're just scratching the surface. We have industrially zoned land next to residential land. We're not changing that. So a manufacturer with a fleet of trucks can still go into a neighborhood, as you explained. It's just this warehouse use that we're excluding. We're not solving the problem. We're just scratching the surface. And all I'm saying is, I'm just concerned that before we leap, we have to look. And if we haven't thoroughly looked, and we don't know if the storage of trucks at a manufacturing facility would trigger this, then we don't know. We don't know what the consequences of a transportational terminal is, or the definition of that. We need to figure that out. So again, I'm not defending warehouses. I would be happy to be liberated from the shackles of having to say yes to warehouses. But I want it to be done the right way so we can actually do it. And so that we put a law in place that can actually be practically used and survive. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I would just say, Jay, we explained very carefully what we wanted to do. And Jay, and I know you know Jay, said that this language was sufficient. And town council apparently vetted it and said the same thing. So,
It has not been vetted by town council.
what's that? Well,
And I have great respect for Jay. Jay Talman knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and he was town council, and he's worked with us on many of the processes I just described. He's great. But the process usually is, let's really vet this. Let's invite all the stakeholders, all the people that might be impacted by this, and really think about it. And really make sure this is not only just an answer to a problem, but the answer to the problem. And that's what I'm looking for.
All right, Nadine?
I don't know if she heard you.
Yes,
Nadine,
hello, good evening, Mr. Chairman. May I ask a question? My name's Nadine Bailey. I'm with Mackey and Mackey in Norwood, Massachusetts. I was before you a couple weeks ago on the permanent extension for 351 to 353 Maple Street LLC, which is my client. I have a question regarding the wording or the effects, consequences of the proposed zoning bylaw, and that my client is interested in and has gotten approval for adding a 58,000 square foot extension onto the existing building. And so I was wondering, where would my client stand with respect to being able to pull a building permit to complete that addition? Would they be prohibited because it's expanding a warehouse?
That's a very good question.
I think what's gonna happen is, and again, we would have to seek legal, but at this point, what would happen is whatever the vote of the town decides, come next Wednesday, we have to, at that point, fill out a Form 7, which goes to the Attorney General at the state level, and they're gonna look at this and either say, yes, this is doable, or they're gonna reject it. And at that point, we'll have to figure out how to determine decisions based on those existing projects that are in place and those that might be coming through. But even if it passes at the town meeting, there is a threshold that has to be passed at the state level, which is done through the Form 7. So if everybody unanimously even approves this at the town meeting, hypothetically, it could still be denied at the state level if it wasn't worded properly, if there were things that are ambiguous, if there's, terms that just don't make sense, that's done at the state level. So, that's gonna be determined at a later date, no matter what the vote, well, obviously, if the vote is yes, it will have to go through. If it's no, it doesn't go through at the state level, but that would be the next step. So we would have to figure that out at the time.
And thank you for the question. Mr. Goyette, I'd like to go back to my opening statement. I indicated, first of all, this was a citizen's petition. I also indicated that this warrant article was not sponsored, nor was it co-sponsored by the Bellingham Planning Board. The Bellingham Planning Board was not part and parcel of the drafting this warrant. It was not consulted into its development. I want to echo the comment that the vice chair made in regards to the language ambiguity. And I think a better option is to look at bylaw changes on how we can facilitate for bylaw changes. We don't know what the ramifications are going to be. I've heard that unless you have a building permit and an approval, you can't build. So I think the way it is written now, if it was to pass, would open up to possible litigation. I'm also wondering, in place of warehousing, what can replace in your mind on these parcels of property? Warehouse. I know people want to talk about medical development, biotech. You need water for biotech. We have looked at that. So what do you envision that these landowners could do once you've taken away their opportunity to develop their land?
Well, I mean,
For a warehouse.
it's small manufacturing. I mean, honestly, Bill, I'm not here to try to tell landowners what to do in absence of the warehouses and distribution centers. Because I'm looking at strictly those as causing the issues that they are. But
Go ahead.
there are other types of industrial buildings.
Okay.
And I'm just not, I'm not looking to tell them what they can put on there. I mean, they can see what fits on that property other than warehouses and distribution centers that don't cause the chaos that is causing now. And that could be, it could be a small manufacturing. My point is that depending on where these locations are, it should often dictate what type of industrial building goes on there. And so, I don't know, what they would want to put on there, small manufacturing, a data center, flex, I don't know.
Okay. You raised an interesting point. That you don't want to tell developers what they can do with the land. And you come in here and you've quoted numbers about the number of warehouses. And we've said this yearly since I've been on the board. And it's been mentioned at every candidate's night when people have been running for either the zoning board or this board. Like what you just said, we don't solicit warehouses. They come to us. It's not like we're the economic development arm for the town of Bellingham. We only deal with those landowners that make a proposal to us. And that's where this box is developed, okay? I like the analogy that we like to have the key to unlock our hands. I think that key can be better developed through bylaws and dealing with all the stakeholders. One of the departments he didn't mention was you haven't spoken to the zoning board. I don't think you've spoken to those landowners. I think what we need to do, as Brian said, is bring all the stakeholders together, reach out to these landowners and approach them. Because you are reducing an opportunity that they had in their quiver of things they can do when they bought their lands. That will lead to lawsuits. I don't want to expose the town as best we can to lawsuits down the road.
I understand, let me just,
And you can counter that, that's,
first off, I'm not saying that we tell landowners what to do with their property. My philosophy, and I know you differ from it, is that when a landowner comes with an application for a warehouse or what have you, my philosophy is that if it unreasonably and adversely affects people around that area, then that doesn't automatically give them the right to put that building up. I think if it's another type of building that doesn't cause the traffic concerns, the environmental concerns, the safety concerns, have at it. But, I can't put a shooting range up on my property because it's gonna unreasonably affect those next to me. If a warehouse unreasonably affects the people around that area, then that shouldn't go up. So, and again, my philosophy is different. I wouldn't have a problem saying, listen, once it's all vetted, this is gonna cause unreasonably and adverse effects. Maybe look at a different type of building that doesn't do that based on the location of the property that it sits on. If it was an industrial industrial park, build whatever you want. But Don's house, you look out his picture window and you see a warehouse. So that's.
that land was properly zoned.
I'm not saying it wasn't properly zoned.
Well, we're getting to that box that Brian speaks about all the time.
Well, but because it's zoned industrial, my point though has been, it gives an applicant a right to build an industrial building. I don't believe that it automatically gives them the right to build a warehouse if that building, based on the location of that industrial parcel, has an unreasonable and adverse effect on the community around it. And that's where I think we have the problems that we have now. We have 8 mega warehouses that are in residential areas. And we're saying, oh, it's industrial zone, so they can put whatever they want up. I don't agree with that. And the problem is that we've never had to be able to test that in the land court because it's never been a denial. That if you deny it, and we can test this in land court by saying, listen, it does this, and this, not to mention the fact that I believe, you don't have to, that it actually does affect our home values. And the byproduct of that is, crime rates can be affected. I would like to be able to test that. And if we're wrong, then you can say, we tested it, but we've never had the opportunity to do that. It's just your philosophy and my philosophy and no test for it.
I know this isn't a public meeting, but I'm just gonna stand up, Don Martinez. We have bylaws in the town that allow our citizen petitioner to go out and get the necessary votes. He's done everything. I think going around in circles here isn't gonna do anybody any good. Town meeting is already set for Wednesday, May 1st. And I just think at this point, you said it earlier, we have a big meeting plan, we have a big agenda. I don't think anything valuable is now coming out of this meeting by what you're doing to this gentleman here.
I'm just asking him questions.
No, but my point is, I think it's time to move on. Have your decision, move on and fulfill the
We have
rest of the agenda.
other members here that may want to speak.
It's just.
So is there any other opinions from there? Because I would like to move this, we've closed the public meeting at this point?
Not yet. No.
Not yet, I moved to close the
No.
public meeting. Unless
Bill,
there could be a second, I do want to go on the record though.
let me add one last thing if I may.
Sure.
I would say this should go to vote. Whatever you decide, if you think there's a better way to handle this, let the vote go to vote. And then we can get together and say, okay, Now let's take it to the next step and see if we can make this a little bit better. Because my fear is that if we say, let's hold off on the vote, we talk to landowners, talk to this, then we can have 3 other warehouses approved before we even get to that point.
You're simply making a recommendation. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Close the public hearing. We have a second?
Close it, but then I'll-
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to make a statement after we close the public hearing. Okay. Just go. So we have a first and a second? Yep.
Before you
You
close
vote?
the public meeting, can I just say something? My name is Rose Boucher, I was at 14 Mark Avenue, and I just wanted to say that, if you choose to support Mr. Goya's petition, couldn't you, the town, our board and council, tighten up the language, make it so that it's safe and, not entirely free from litigation, but pretty close to it? I mean, if you supported the petition,
So I
couldn't
can,
you then step in and tighten up the language?
unfortunately, we can't, so once it's on the warrant, it's on the warrant. And we can't weigh in on the language. Someone could vote to amend on the floor of town meeting to amend language. But that's always not the best place to have discussions about things like that. But no, we can't change the law.
We can't.
We can't change.
Fortunately, right?
That's not what she's asking.
But you can't sit in.
What she's asking is if it gets approved at town meeting and it goes through and it gets approved at all the ends, then it has to by doing the state level. Could you then, once it becomes a bylaw or a zoning change, could you then go back and tighten up the language?
Yes, and why couldn't you do that?
And that's what I'm possible. That's possible. If it's allowed and then there's a subcommittee or something that could happen.
You would need a group of citizens.
Well, and then you can talk about transportation hub or transportation terminal and all of those words that matter and will affect us as a town, and also the stakeholders. Why can't we do that?
So usually.
Sounds like a win-win.
Usually when law is passed, it's not, let's pass it and then talk about it afterwards. It's, let's talk about it and then pass it because usually if that process plays out, the town approves it, it goes to the AG, that can take wherever long that takes, it comes back. Then we meet every 2 weeks. So we say, let's establish a subcommittee. That subcommittee meets maybe once a month for 2 hours. That process can take many years. So the best practice is before you make something a law, you really look at it and you make sure what you know what you're getting, because there are people in our town that will be, and everybody will be affected by this.
Right, but as Ms. Otabashian said, you would take it in the steps that are necessary, and then you can intervene.
Yeah, but that could be 3 years after it's been
It
passed.
doesn't happen.
Or 2 years.
So how long will it take with bylaws?
So I didn't.
How long might it take to establish bylaws? If we don't do it this way and we go the way of the bylaw strictly, which is what it sounds like people are asking about. How
Well,
long might that take?
So it depends on how quickly the stakeholders can meet and discuss and vet. But it's usually they meet monthly, or it could be bi-weekly. I don't know what a committee would be and who would be made up of that and who schedules would be a function of their schedule, but it'll probably be in this room.
It could be November, it could be next spring. But I think that is the better process. Are we have a vote on the floor unless someone else wants to make it?
To close.
Close the public hearing.
Time out. Who made the motion?
I made the motion,
I
seconded by
second.
Nick, to close the meeting, and then I want to make a statement.
Okay.
Leave this to.
Yeah.
So the hearing is closed.
You gotta vote
Vote.
first, we need to vote.
And it's that. Nobody else wants, did we check, nobody else wants?
I don't see anyone else's hands.
Zoom.
Close the public hearing.
Aye.
Aye.
Bill, aye.
Nick, aye.
Pat,
Want to make your comment?
Yeah, I want to make a comment. I'm gonna recommend, I'm not making a motion at this point, but I'm gonna go on the record of saying that I'm gonna take a position where I want to send it to town meeting without a recommendation, whether not for, not against. I think the town voters should vote for this. I'm concerned about the unintended consequences of this. We talked about a couple of them already. My thought, when I was reading this thing, the electronic businesses of the future, when you're placing orders online, unless there's a cash register physically there, I think we could have some issues with online businesses in town, I don't have a good example, but I know a lot of businesses take, you're ordering online and your delivery guy shows up. And yes, you store things on site and there's lots of things being stored. Manufacturing, I work for a manufacturer. I know we've got trucks coming in and out. I know we store lots of things. I'm concerned that some of that language could feed into this. I'm very glad that, this is not trying to squash economic development. I think we do need to balance our checkbooks. I think development is part of what keeps the tax rates reasonable for our residents. It's part of the engine that keeps this town going. The roads, the schools, I got 2 kids in schools. I'm concerned that if this is not a moratorium, it's not a, hey, let's wait 5 years and see what happens. It's a forever thing until someone turns it over again. I'm concerned that there's gonna be unintended consequences. There's been a lot of development recently. I think, but we're still trying to do, still gonna do with proposed 2.5 override to get the right paramedics in place. So we've got economic needs that we need to handle. I worry about this squashing other types of unintended economic development. So I guess, I'll acknowledge that our zoning is a problem here and it has caused havoc. And we've got houses next to larger buildings, warehouses next to houses. It is an issue in this town that's been going back since the 70s. I think we need to do something that I think this board has been involved with, trying to do some things on Maple Street that went to town hall that got shut down because the voters said, no, we don't want to support no warehouses on Maple Street. That was shut down. I guess at this point, I think I've made my position. I'm gonna move on, let the next person go, but I'm for moving this to town meeting without a recommendation.
I think that it has to be said, in the most general sense, that a citizen's petition is a good thing. We have a citizen that's come here tonight. He's chosen to exercise his rights. He's taken all the necessary steps to get here, to get to the special town meeting. I strongly believe that the fate of this petition is in the residents' hands. It should be in the residents' hands, and it will be come next Wednesday. I don't think that I personally want to influence it either way, because it should be something that the residents decide. I think we've had some great conversation, and I would be willing to make a motion.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the board. I've heard all your comments and I agree, your article, I have nothing against it whatsoever. I applaud you for it. But all the good, the bad and the ugly you discussed, it happens everywhere. Happens down south. My car was robbed last weekend. And that's because of the encampment behind Sears. Had nothing to do with the warehouse. I have traffic up and down my road because of the 99 connector. All the tractor trailers go to Rhode Island now, right by my house. So there's always an issue with everything, but it happens everywhere. You're not just being focused on, trust me. And me, I think personally, I think this is going to be challenged. And I think that it needs to be tightened up. for sure legally. I make a recommendation, make no recommendation.
Okay. I am, Mr. Gayette, I want to thank you for all you've come. I'm looking forward to your participation moving forward in the town of Bellingham. As I said earlier, I have some concerns with the language. I think another way would have been to do it was to go to the bylaws. I also think one of the great things that we have, not to get long-winded in this country, is the town meeting. I think it goes back to England. And the people have the right to make the decision. So that's why I'm in favor of having the people make the decision. I feel uncomfortable that this planning board, personally, we weigh in. I want to leave it up to the public. I have shown some of the concerns I have, and I think it needs to be fine-tuned. I don't want to use this board as a bully pulpit to articulate my personal views. I've articulated based on what you've said tonight, some of the concerns I have with the language. I also want to echo the fact that we tried to rezone. I think that is the best option. So at this point, I would be in favor, as others on the board, need to let the public decide and take no action. But we would need a motion accordingly. Do you have anything else? Any last comments?
No, I thank you, Steve, for your efforts. I really do, and I want to support this and I want the result. I think that we desperately need, in a holistic way, to look at our zoning and correct it and get it right and help the people that live on those splits and there's not splits between zoning districts. I am all for the intent behind this. I do. I want to support it. I have concerns that it just hasn't been vetted enough to make it tight, to make it work for the town in the way, holistically, in the way that it needs to. So I am happy to be part of a committee that looks at these things or whatever, but it just, that's my concern. It's not anything to do with warehouses or anything like that. I just think it needs to be part of a more thorough vetting process.
Can I make a comment?
No,
Public hearing is closed,
No.
unfortunately.
no, the hearing is closed for this. I'm sorry, we can't, that's why it's closed. No, we can't.
It's a procedural comment. I'm the chairman of the finance committee. I just want to make a comment so that you understand. So in the town,
Public hearing is closed.
It's,
There was a point of order.
Okay,
okay?
no, go ahead. You-
So I'm the chairman of the finance committee. My name's John Allen. Under the bylaws, if there's an article that is subject to a public hearing by another committee, which you're doing right now, and it does not include any financing, then the finance committee does not make a recommendation to the town meeting. So now what you're saying is you're not going to make a recommendation at the town meeting either. In my 13 years on the finance committee, I've never been in this situation, so I don't know what we're going to say. I don't know what you're going to say at the town meeting. So I think you have to be prepared for somebody to ask the question, why isn't anybody making a recommendation? That's my point.
We've just, not to belabor it, we've made no recommendation on prior zoning petitions that came before us.
I know, but in some of those, it included dollar amounts where we would have made a recommendation.
Okay, I got you.
This one doesn't include dollar amounts and it's a public hearing, so the finance committee has no authority or comment and can't make a recommendation on this item.
I think Hartford Ave, there was no recommendations on that one, when we did that one. And so I think we need to vote and just however
We need
you
a
vote,
motion.
that's,
I can make it. I'd like to make a motion to take no action on the citizens petition article.
However, second.
You mean not make a recommendation?
Correct.
Second.
Any further discussion? And call for the vote.
Dennis,
So we're just, I'm sorry, to clarify, we're not recommending. We're just taking no position.
Correct.
No action.
Aye.
Aye,
Bill, Nick,
that motion passes unanimously. Oh, I can't thank you enough for coming and participating. Steve, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate everyone's public input tonight. And please keep on coming to our planning board meetings. Thank you. We fill the meeting, so you, try to keep the conversation all outside. We have to leave the doors open by bylaws. What's next in the agenda?
We have 306 Maple Street is asking for a continuation to May 9th, so we need a motion to open the hearing and continue. Both the scenic road and the regular.
And we're gonna need two separate motions.
Yes, yes.
Can I ask a question? How many times in a row have these guys asked for continuances
This will be the third.
in a row? And,
It's third in a row.
and the chances of them actually being able to come back on the night
They will be back on the 9th.
to ask for another.
I'll let them know they have to be back for
They-
your recommendation.
My
They have to
understanding
be
is you're
back.
getting some information back
Yes.
with regards to fencing and sounds.
Okay,
You don't have to.
I will.
It's, you don't have to. It's,
When,
but they've asked for a continuation.
I think we're into the, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that we're into the routine where people are coming, applicants are coming, meeting after meeting, asking for continuances and not ready. And I don't know how to stop, I don't know how to fix that, but I think we're in a position where
We gave them a checklist at one point.
They're, all respect for the applicant, they have had to do they've had to do sound and they've had to do traffic, and that does take time. It's that there's only maybe 2 or 3 sound engineers in the state, and so that's what they're working with.
I'm
So
not saying we
that's-
don't give them continuance, I'm
Right.
saying that maybe it's a month from now or 2 months from now, but to get their work done.
Yeah.
Because I think we're I think they're underestimating the time it would take to get back. So that's all I'm asking is that we in the future think about that.
We articulate that to them.
Okay.
I think,
Is there a chance that,
I just think they've had their scope of services for what we wanted back from them, that they needed to hit those checklist items that we wanted, and that's what they're doing. They are doing it. And, I mean, we've got back in, yes, they're very
I
close.
think they are.
Yes, they're very close.
Phil, I think your point's well taken,
Yes.
that when we have a project, the neighbors come out and then
Mhm.
they'll just continue it where people get lost in the process. So I think the answer is we just gotta be a little bit more realistic when we continue here.
That's a good point.
They desperately want to come back as quickly as they want to, and we're optimistic, and we need to be more realistic.
Mhm. Good point.
I agree with you.
And we gotta do that this time too, so when are they looking to come back?
They're coming, they'll be ready the next meeting, which is the 9th. And they'll have the sound report ready and the other BSC review.
I would like to see what they have available on the 9th,
Mhm.
and then continue to move it forward.
It takes time.
So moved. Okay. So you want to open the public hearing?
well, we're gonna continue the public.
Which is gonna-
People, you have to
We're just
make a
gonna-
motion.
You have to open it and then continue
So
it.
we've never done that before, right?
Well, you have to open it to then continue it to a date certain so that the public
Yeah,
knows.
okay. So we've never opened a meeting by vote other than the initial hearing. And then we close it by vote at the final hearing. So the chairman has the authority to open a meeting that's already been opened. So we don't need to open the meeting and then.
Yes.
It's not
It's not
closed,
closed.
right? It's not closed.
So I think we can just move to. continue.
Okay, then we can, make a motion to, continue to a date certain, May 9th.
Okay,
And what's our
So
decision
Brian?
deadline?
May 29th. So Brian, you make the motion?
I'll second it. Bill.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote.
Dennis, aye.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill, aye.
Nick, I.
The motion passes unanimously. We also have a motion on Scenic Road
Mhm.
for the same property, 306 Maple Street. I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing.
So
Do I have a second?
Second, Nick.
Any other discussion?
No.
Call for the vote.
Dennis, aye.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill, aye.
Nick, I.
That motion passes unanimously. Speaking of continuations, we have 57 Mendon Street. Can you bring us up to speed on that?
Received an email this week that they are looking to also continue.
Okay, any reasons why?
They're looking to revise the application that they submitted.
Okay,
What's that process?
That's what they're looking into now.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Mhm.
they gonna be
So
ready
the
that night?
originals, that's what they've asked for.
Do we have,
Yeah, I
do
feel like
we have
that
a
realistic.
continuation date that we would need to have for them? Like,
We-
do we have a date?
They're the
Yeah.
end of May as well. So they're
okay, this
asking
is
for
what
the
I
9th.
would recommend. It looks like, May 9th is filling up a
Mhm.
little bit.
We could do the 23rd.
I would do the 23rd.
Sure.
So moved.
Seconded.
And that way it's before the decision deadline, then they come back and we can adjust accordingly.
And discussion would be, the point that would be that if they're not here to present, then we gotta take a vote one way or another, so it might be for them to join us that night.
We have a motion on the floor. I'd like to call for the vote.
Dennis, aye.
Brian, aye. Bill, aye.
Bill, aye.
Nick, I.
That motion passes unanimously. Amy, we come down to North and Blackstone Street. I believe this is a continued public hearing.
Yes.
Like to have the applicant come up and bring us up to date.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Falk from our Toronto here on behalf of the applicant. With me is Amanda Cavallari from Carrier and Helmont. Last meeting, we left with just 2 remaining issues. And the board voted to authorize the draft of approval decisions for the special permit and the site plan and stormwater permit. The 2 remaining issues were questions about the placement of the driveway for the project site. And so we were asked to put stakes out to mark the location of the driveway, which we did. We had some emails back and forth with the neighbor at 268 Blackstone Street across the street in terms of concerns about impact of the driveway and the positioning that affects that property. There had been a request for screening on that property. It's with the stakes out there and the images that we have put before the board, we still feel as though screening on that property wouldn't do anything in terms of the concern about headlights. That's where we're at with it. We were also asked to look again at question of one of the neighbors down Blackstone Street who has used our property to access a field on his property, whether we can accommodate that going forward with the project. And we took a look again, our conservation management permit that we received from the state, which has a form of restriction that we will be putting on the property for wildlife preservation purposes, specifically states that we can't allow motorized vehicles across that restricted area. So our position is that we really can't accommodate that request.
Okay. In regards to the applicant's concern, have you engaged in any discussions with them on what is acceptable to either party at all?
With respect to which issue, Mr. Chairman?
The issue with the tree and the lights and the driveway. We looked at various photographs. We've all had a chance to drive down there. Is this going to be a stalemate or?
I mean, it's from our perspective, it's in the board's hands. I mean, we don't think We don't think it's necessary. We don't think it's going to solve the purported problem. We don't think headlights are going to cause a significant impact or really any impact on that house, given the position of the driveway. Someone taking a left out of that driveway, by the time they are in front of that house, they're going to be parallel to that house. So we don't think screening directly opposite our driveway, which is goes right towards an existing tree in a lawn area, is going to make any difference for the home on that property.
Does the point of your I noticed the stakes, I went out there. You've got stakes showing the center of the cul-de-sac, which is to when I looked at it, it was to the left of the driveway. So you got cars coming around and you've got lights coming around, and now you've got lights coming across the street. So to this member, I was seeing that there is going to be light issues.
If I may, through the chair. So as far as the layout goes, and I can bring the plans up again if we wanna, look at them, but the cul-de-sac has houses that are gonna be going around that. So there's gonna be screening from the houses, from the cars going around the cul-de-sac. And there is a fairly significant planting, screening trees at the front of the road as well. So in order to kind of keep the development back, it's set, I don't have I can pull it up, but I want to say it's 80+ feet off of the main road. And
The center of the cul-de-sac, it was directly behind that trailer sitting there, right? So you got a trailer sitting right on the property, that's another, we'll talk about that in a minute, but it was directly behind that.
Just pull up the plans. I think our point is that the center of that cul-de-sac is, I think it's actually more like 150 feet from the traveled way. But between that area and where the homes across the street is not looking anything like it does right now. In addition to having homes around the cul-de-sac, we're gonna have 18 starting at 12-foot arborvitaes all along Blackstone Street, which is gonna provide significant screening, both in terms of seeing this new small neighborhood in that area, but also from the impact that you're concerned about.
And I'll just finish up here. So, I'm concerned that the construction is going to be going on for a long period of time. I'm guessing more than a year. It's like there's going to be a year with, a time period where you're not going to have any screening there. That's concerning. I mean, living in a construction area is not pleasant. I'll say that from personal experience. So 3 trees going up and taking one down to me is not outrageous being asked for mitigation. So that's my position.
I thought that I had tonight, on the neighbor's property, are there overhead wires that if trees were planted? Are there wires that if the trees grew to 30-40 feet, it would grow into the wire?
It's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head.
I didn't notice when I was there.
Okay.
They're saying no.
There's not, okay.
Not on that side, no.
Okay, what I don't agree with is cutting down a tree. I think if the neighbor wanted the tree cut down, they would have time to do that on their own. I would be open to plantings after that fact. Likely aligned with, the applicant's planting schedule. But I'm not in favor of cutting down a tree. So I'd simply, support the idea of three new trees.
Yeah, side of that, I don't know how much more the board can do here. I still think it's between you two to work out. And they agree to that, but I mean, for us to sit here and just keep going, trying to find a resolution to all of this to stop lighting, I don't think that's ever gonna happen.
Did I see a proposed condition, an email saying that you would live with a proposed condition?
So through the chair, anticipating that the board might be going down this path, we've put together a condition Again, we don't think it's necessary. We think it really won't do anything, but we did provide language that, you know, we had looked at that. You know, if the board chooses to adopt that language, you know, we think it would work. But we don't, you know, we think it would work in terms of that we could accomplish it and carry it out. Whether it solves the purported problem, you know, I don't think it does.
No, and I appreciate the effort. So I thought that the condition was a good, basically planting the trees, removing the pine if the neighbor wants it. I think that's as good as it's gonna get. So I would be comfortable incorporating that condition into the decision. It seems like the applicant could live with it. I had a question about, well, we're not,
I just,
yeah, go ahead.
I looked at all the documents. I'm gonna stand by what I said, last meeting. We need an easement and a hold harmless agreement. If it were to do any work in the park. I don't want to expose the town of Bellingham, nor the applicant, nor whatever company they use, to an unnecessary lawsuit. I feel, that tree has been there a long time. I think a compromise would be for you to remove the tree on your own. And then when they do their plantings on a specific day, they will notify you in advance. They would prep the soil when they're putting in their plants on Blackstone Street and plant. I think the incremental cost will be not great at that point for the applicant. I know 2 or 3, 12-foot arborvitaes. That the responsibility after that point would be on you. But that we would have to have an agreement that holds the applicant harmless, protects the applicant, their vendors, and the town. And the responsibility for removing the tree would be up to you.
Are you speaking to, I can't tell who you're looking at.
I'm looking at,
My father and I?
You-
Okay,
you-
I'm
you-
sorry, I thought you were looking at them.
no, I'm looking at you and your phone. I think that's a reasonable accommodation. We have never, in my 10 years here, done it do removing trees from people's lands. It's a slippery slope. I don't want to go down. And if you heard me speak last week, I've been in the risk management field all my life. That's an exposure I don't want to leave the town with, unless we're protected by a doctor. So I think that would,
Can I
I
respond?
think that's what the board would be leading towards.
May I respond? So first and foremost, thank you all truly, for your time and consideration on this. Our intent was never to hold anyone, liable for the removal of a tree. But I went out and measured how far that existing tree is up from the ground, because I'm 5'7", and I kept thinking, it's higher than me. I keep saying it's 5 feet. Those branches, the top, it was pruned up 9.5 feet.
The tree in question,
Yes, 9.5 feet. So now think about 9.5 feet. I have a picture here. It's very sparse, the branches. So this is no protection from light pollution of cars coming and turning. So I'm thankful for your consideration for the 3 12-foot arborvitae. I can't thank you enough, but I do want to point out that that existing tree is not any light protection as they state. And I also have other photographs showing where the driveway and everything is.
we have seen this.
Okay, I made them larger so that you could see them, and I won't waste your time, so.
The email.
The question I have
Oh, it did, okay.
is not the condition of the tree,
Mhm.
it's the removal of the tree. Now, in actuality, based on you telling us that that tree has deteriorated over time,
It's a healthy tree. I'm not saying it's
well,
unhealthy,
it doesn't give you right now protection from,
because we trimmed it up
Okay.
9.5 feet from the ground. Yes.
okay,
So if I,
that lends credence to that was your choice to do, but I don't want to go there.
But there wasn't a development, yeah, I mean, we did that so that my father could get in and out of.
I know, I understand that. Yes, ma'am.
Question. And again, I'm happy you trim the tree and everything like that. But if it's for him to get out of the driveway, I think my concern would be if the applicant installs the trees. I'm afraid that we need to figure out how they're gonna protect the light and not impede sight distance.
We've already had 2 people come out and look at the property for tree removal and, tree plantings.
Yep.
And they told us exactly where they need to go to protect from the light as well as to assist him getting in and out of the driveway. It won't impede his view of the street, because I know you say the driveway's not right there. It is right there. Our driveways, they're gonna be coming in, they're all right there, which is fine. I'm not saying whatever. I know you can't move it at this point. But we've had 2 individuals come and look at the properties. We have 2 quotes at this point telling us how much it's going to cost. 2 separate places have to come. The people who plant the trees aren't the people who cut the trees down, apparently. So I've already had all the quotes. I've already spoken with everyone that needs to be spoken.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
So it seems like we've possibly found the solution, so. The applicant, I think, has agreed in their proposed language to give you 3 trees. You tell them where you want them to go, they'll plant them.
Mhm.
And I think that is the best we're gonna do.
Yep, no,
And-
we're fine with
Okay,
that.
so that's, I think the condition then is fine as it's written. I'm not concerned at all with the town's liability. They're gonna make sure that they protect themselves and you're gonna give them permission to enter your land and they're gonna say, where would you like these trees? We're gonna tell them. And problem hopefully is solved.
And we're not touching the tree.
No, we'll take care of the tree then, I guess. My other only remaining question is, and it's no big deal, but what happens to the mailbox and all this? Because it's right in that line of the driveway. Will it get moved further back into the property or over?
I think that question was raised before. I think we suggested our hands, not.
No, I'm not asking. to
But our hands being
side. No, that's
It's
not,
gonna have to be moved, ma'am.
right, but where to is my.
That's left up to I believe, the post office.
They tell you,
What?
they'll tell you where to put it.
But
Even when you move it.
it's gonna be
distance.
taken down in construction for the road. That's what I'm saying. I'm confused by that response. Forgive me.
We'll coordinate with the applicant.
Right, there you go.
Okay,
If
That's
if
something-
it could, that would be great.
you can work out, we can't,
That would be great.
that's beyond our domain.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't think we were being unreasonable. So thank you very much for working with us. I truly appreciate it. Thank you all to each. of you
Well,
on the
hopefully,
board.
we're not there yet.
Oh.
Okay.
I don't know. if
Yeah,
this-
we're gonna walk away right now, David. There's no motion on the floor. And, the applicant would be happy and you would be upset. So I would entertain a motion.
So we need to take a look at, there's
Or the decision.
there's a decision that's there, so
You're comfortable with that? The decision is-
I have some questions about the decision, but.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Let's go through the.
well, I think Bill had something.
Yeah, no, that was my question, and then they're also asking for some waivers, so I think we need to go through the
Yeah.
waivers and the decision before we vote on this,
So I'll just go.
along with
Okay.
the motion for that we just talked about.
All right, so I think,
All yours.
so if we're all done taking in information, I think we are, yeah.
Close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing.
I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Wait, hold on a second.
Yeah.
What are you guys about to vote on right now?
Excuse me?
What are you about to vote on right now?
We're voting on, to close the public hearing so we can make a decision.
I still have some comments to make about the last issue remaining.
Okay?
So I reached out to the applicant.
Your
to-
name, could you, for the record?
My name's Rod Cameron.
Thank you.
I apologize for
Thank you.
13 Blackstone.
giving you, yes, sir.
I reached out to the applicant to set up some time to discuss the issue. And they got back to me via email saying that they couldn't accommodate anything because of zoning issues, conservation areas. And those conservation areas are a result of the building that they're putting on. Right now, it's zoned for agricultural land. because of what they're building right now, they're changing that area and then that's blocking me. So I think that before this can move forward, I think we need to resolve that issue to not adjust that zoning area that is blocking my access to that backfield.
So I think maybe when you're saying zoning, you're probably talking about the conservation restrictions.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you want to address that?
So the conservation restriction isn't a zoning.
Yeah, he just said that.
Yeah, it's natural heritage. It's associated with the box turtle. That parcel, along with several other parcels up to the north, is a very large area that's in the priority habitat area that you can see on the mass mapper for GIS. It's a protected area for the eastern box turtle. So as part of being able to develop any portion of this property, we had to go through both Conservation Commission and Natural Heritage, which is another organization that protects the priority habitats, and that's at the state level. So the state level is mandating, minimize the area of development, and every other area has to be protected, which was the same for the other development as
Yeah,
well.
protected during construction.
No,
And that
long
was,
term.
So as such, because of your development, we no longer have access to use the land behind for agricultural use, which it is zoned for.
Can I ask a question? Does the conservation restriction from National Heritage exist already today because of the box turtle?
As part of the prior development, yes, it's being amended. But it's the conservation restriction that was created for the prior development is in place already.
So right now, the restriction is in place already, is what you're saying?
I believe so.
the prior development that you guys put forth though, right? That you guys requested, right?
No, it wasn't under us. It was a
Wasn't
different,
under-
I think it was a different applicant.
It was.
Yeah, it wasn't, we weren't part of that
I
application.
recall for 4 homes
Yes, but that was a prior application.
prior to them.
Yep.
And
And we weren't part of those discussions though.
We weren't part of the application process.
Yeah,
That
no,
wasn't-
but that's my point. We weren't part of those discussions.
So
That was the notice of intent process. I believe back when those lots were
We were
created.
never notified for that.
So unfortunately, you are in a situation where you need to pursue any rights that you may have to cross this property to enter your land, probably in litigation. And it's a civil matter between you and the current landowners. So there's nothing we can do to impose it. What you're asking for is for us to say, hey, give him an easement so he can cross over to his property. And we would love to do that. We really would. Unfortunately, the Conservation Commission and National Heritage said, you can't cross these boundaries because these are now protected. And that was done years before, it sounds like.
Yes.
So there's nothing we can do to impose an easement. Do you have legal rights and options? Probably. But this isn't the forum. The forum, unfortunately, is to hire a land use attorney and possibly file suit or work with the applicant in some way. But there is now this boundary, this no man's land that mechanized machinery can't cross over. And then we can't do anything to change that, unfortunately.
Well,
Can I just ask a
can I just
clarifying
ask
question?
one question? I apologize for interrupting you. He just raised a point. I remember seeing in the documents. Can you articulate the fact that the National Heritage does not want machine operated material?
Correct.
Can you just cite that for us to clarify the issue?
That Natural Heritage does not want motorized vehicles.
Correct. In addition to the access.
Yes.
We're hamstrung by another limitation, which is the motorized vehicles.
Motorized vehicles.
Through that
Conservation
block of land
restriction.
in the back of their development.
Could you show the board? Could you show the board which piece of land that we're talking about, please?
If I can figure out how this
Probably.
about 20 yards wide.
Just while we're finding that, and
Certainly.
this is just a reminder for me, if I remember when we first came, there was a certain amount of land that was already classified as protected heritage land. I believe we extended that as a part of this application to include additional pieces. Do we have a markup of what was previously part of that and what's been added to that? Because I dug through the emails, I tried to find it. I thought this was not previously part of the national heritage. It may not be a relative point at this junction, but just curious if this was part of what we just added under this development.
I recall the discussions that we had. I don't have the maps in front of me.
I think that was, it had to be in front of the Conservation Commission.
Correct.
That's,
That was
I
not
don't
in
even
front
know
of
if you
us.
guys have got into it with that
I
much
think
depth,
we did
because
direct
it would be
you
conservation.
to conservation, then we did mention the National Trust. I was unaware at that point in time about powerized or motorized equipment until I saw recent documents.
Can I ask you a question? What is the usage you use the land for?
Agricultural purposes.
So-
Which is,
You go.
So historically, it's just been a field that's been hayed, used for agricultural exercise of animals. We have thoughts to use it for other agricultural
We want to put fruit trees
things
back
in the
there.
future, which we
And
are
we-
gonna be prohibited from doing.
And throughout this whole process, which has been going on for, I don't even know how long, has prevented us from starting that.
and how did you don't own the land?
We own it.
I own that
Own
back
it.
field. I
So
own the back field.
Oh,
if I'm correct,
And my family's had access for over 20 years, which is the
For 7
requirement.
this
years.
project's blocking your right of way.
Yes,
this is your parcel, Rod?
yes,
Yes. So this is our parcel. This is our parcel, this is our parcel, this is our parcel.
yes.
So that's our whole project of 20 acres. The wetland is here. See this yellow line and that PH 858?
Mhm.
That's natural heritage priority habitat. That's the eastern box turtle, which is why we were required to do a filing with natural heritage in addition to Conservation Commission. So we have several different entities that we're working with. Goddard Consulting is doing the wetland portion of it. So I don't have full information as far as, I know that they did go to Conservation Commission already, and we have been working closely with Natural Heritage, the project team. So so this parcel here has frontage on Blackstone Street. And our parcels have the frontage on Blackstone Street also. But all of these areas, and you can see it's a quite large area. So what that means is any work that wants to be done on any of these parcels would be subject to Conservation Commission for permitting, as well as going through Natural Heritage.
I think the key word is work, any work, any construction. That's not what we're doing.
So where's his parcel? Just, is
This
it around
one
the
right here.
213?
I
This
can-
one,
What's the green, what's right up here?
My house right here, this is all wetlands, I'm blocked from it, this is my parcel here, there's a field right here. My aunt's owns the other half of it. The front field's here, and we've been accessing it through this area
I
right here.
think I can pull up.
I don't mind going around this way or any which way, as long as I can maintain.
And you own a home over in
Right there,
it is,
You can't cross the wetland.
the wetland right here,
that's wet, like wet.
but yeah, that's just, I would need like a bridge to cross that.
Okay.
It's all vernal pools.
Yeah. The applicant, just for the public knowledge. We have, the original application was for how many units?
Back when, I think, what did we have? What was it?
Buildings?
Yes,
Yeah, it was 14 buildings originally.
and we're down to
Three, so
we're
it's
down to
7.
5. So the size of this project has been decreased dramatically by the applicant. This also, if I'm not mistaken, created additional open space
5.5 acres we've added.
that is, can't be touched.
Yep.
That is going to conservation?
It's a conservation restriction easement.
Okay,
I'm sorry to interrupt, Bill. Can I ask you one question, just to be devil's advocate? You sought to, all of that area is protected, right? But you were able to get part of it, well, for lack of a better word, unprotected to build this.
Yes,
So
so
why can't that continue to a strip of land, say his property? Why can't that happen?
so
My understanding of it, we weren't involved in that permit. My understanding of it, it's already in place. And the trade-offs that they make are they look at, where is I mean, that whole area, we've got homes, we've got other things in there that are, may not have turtles in it. So what they're looking at, where is the actual habitat? And in our case, it's not the field, it's the woods. And so that's the area that was subject to the restriction, is the wooded area. And so the permit that we have and the restriction that's required, it prohibits motorized vehicles, it prohibits crossings, it wants it marked because it doesn't really, this isn't your conservation land that's encouraging hiking and trekking through the woods. It's the opposite. They want to leave it protected so that the floor of the woodland is left in place. So a crossing there is really not going to work with that restriction. And that would have been the case, my understanding is, with the 4-lot A&R plan as well as this project. It's not really changed.
that area that you see, this one from here to here.
Yeah.
That was the original conservation restriction
Yeah.
for the 4 lots. So it was, where did they have it? There was another lot added in, but it was these and. I know they had 4 lots at one point.
there's not, I
But they-
believe a lot closer to North Street.
Might have been. But again, we weren't part of that application. I'm just going off of memory right now, but the majority of this area was conservation restriction. That's how the original conservation restriction was created.
You're stuck with
And
it.
we're
You
kind of staying within that same footprint that was created before.
Would he have any, I don't know, maybe luck going through the condominium association once they develop and see if he can get an easement through one of the lots?
There are no more lots. It's going to be a site plan.
Yeah,
So this is a site plan with one development, no lots.
okay, but as a sold out individual,
Homeowners association.
homeowners association, could he talk with them and maybe get,
We can certainly do that.
that's what I'm gonna.
The other option is too, that where it is agricultural use, talk with the state and find out he may have rights off of his own property.
And I can't speak to it with great clarity because I don't represent him, but having done work with agricultural properties, it's a whole different world with wetlands when you're doing agricultural uses and the ability to get crossings. If it truly is agricultural use, I don't believe these properties are subject to chapter protection. I don't think they're in the chapter program for agriculture. But if that is an agricultural use, I'm working on a project right now where once we realized we could treat it as an agricultural use, it was a whole new set of rules with respect to what we could do on wetlands crossings and even using wetlands for portions of the agricultural use. So that may be available to.
Also compounded by the National Heritage Foundation.
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
So
Maybe a
shouldn't
real
that
good
take some
landlord.
discussion with the Conservation Commission with regards to the restricted area? Do you find it?
What was your question?
Said, shouldn't that change the discussion with the Conservation Commission with where the restricted zone lies,
Not the Conservation Commission, it's
or the Heritage
it's the
Foundation?
state.
Or
And
the state?
they're very,
Well,
Yeah.
because their objective is to protect the wildlife with the box turtles. So regardless of agricultural use or not.
he just said
There's
the
access.
counter to that.
Huh?
He just said the counter to that. about
But
they
the,
make
but
one
the,
separate.
but, right, but there's frontage off of. Blackstone Street, our project isn't landlocking. A parcel.
My point wasn't a crossing on our property, my point was a crossing on his own property. If he's got an agricultural use that's between the road and, there are wetlands between the agricultural use and the road. He may have, a lot more options than he thinks with respect to using his own property access.
We would have to
That was
build
my
like
point.
You'd have to build a road bridge,
Bridge.
yeah.
it's all wetlands,
Would you cover the cost of that?
right? But it's just, this development is negating our use of the land, is the bottom line. And
For agricultural use, that's what they're trying to get a variance on, right? They're trying to get a special permit on.
So,
No,
No, you're not trying to get a special permit on?
Go down house.
there, it's.
So-
These are the agriculture. and they're trying to-
as much as we want to find a solution, here is not the forum for that. It would, I really do think you should consult with an attorney.
I already am.
All right, so that is probably where you will be able to address these issues, because there's nothing we can do, unfortunately, to waive the jurisdictional requirements or to impose easements and things like that.
Well, I think, my original request was not for you guys to solve the issue, was to not approve it until the issue is solved.
So that's not something we can do. There's a decision deadline. We have to make a decision by a certain date, or it's just administratively approved. And a civil matter between you and the applicant isn't something we can consider when we don't approve the project. So that's not something we can do.
He gives 30 days to challenge the decision anyway, right?
Right,
The best we can
there's an
do
appeal period.
was to put you in touch with the applicant.
Okay.
And I think we said that from the beginning. You had a verbal agreement over a period of years to use this permit. And then we don't have a record of that. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, our hands are tied in that regard. Because you don't have legal access back there, just that was granted from the previous owner of this property. And when it was done in the past, the issue came up with conservation and National Heritage Trust to protect that type of turtle. So that's beyond our control. If they had been accommodating to the residents in the town by reducing the size and the footprint of this application.
I think at the time, the abutting neighbors should have been part of that discussion with National Heritage and the applicant.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, no, there's nothing, I'm just, that's my
I-
2 cents.
I'm sorry that you weren't,
Yeah,
but that was we were not part of that process.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. We will learn from it, when we deal with protected, areas in the future. But when did that decision happen?
For what? For the natural heritage?
Yes.
Years ago,
Okay.
when the original development was proposed,
Okay.
years. Forget when the.
2021,
2021?
I think so, it might have been sooner, it might have been 2020.
yeah,
We were not part and parcel. Right,
Yeah, this
It's
decision
unfortunate.
now really isn't gonna affect them at all, because we have no control over what happens.
This is a forum.
Yeah, exactly.
There isn't a field process.
Gentlemen.
Yes, I would just like to say, I know this has been a lengthy process, but it seems like you're close to a vote either to approve or not approve.
Correct.
Is that correct? I would just like to urge that you vote no, and the reason being is because close to 100% of the surrounding neighborhoods are single-family homes. And I know this is by a special permit, and I believe it is zoned for single family. So this is a change. So I would urge you to vote no.
Okay,
It's actually, so just, I
clarify.
appreciate that, but to clarify, it's actually zoned for townhouse development.
I thought it had to be requested as a special permit, and it was depending on you voting yes or no.
No,
That's not what was said like a year, 2 years ago. I thought it was.
That was my understanding.
My misunderstanding,
So-
but I thought the legal counsel was on Zoom saying that.
No, it's not our decision to whether or not townhouse a development can go in, that is allowed by the zoning. Did we freeze it? Did we freeze it and they filed their, right? Yeah, we tried to change it. They preserved their zoning under the original zoning, so they're allowed to develop it under the old zoning. We're not giving them the right to do it. They preserved
it was preserved.
they preserved their right to do it. If that makes any sense.
When they put the original development in, it could be zoned single-family homes or, I guess, triplexes.
Yeah, 3 years.
And I don't think the word triplex was used. And they preserved their right by coming up with a proposal, I believe, for 4 of them.
And I think technically, townhouse is technically a special permit, but it is grandfathered in based upon the discussion they had.
Right, but I mean, does that mean if you have the authority that we vote no to approve special permit, then they can't be built? Am I misunderstanding?
Same criteria for the special permit would exist now as it did then.
And it was the townspeople that voted these rules in place. You as the townspeople voted those rules in, and the applicant chose at that time, which is why we're here now, was to freeze it, to be able to do what everybody voted in at that time.
Okay.
And it's
It
the
was
town,
probably a
it's,
misunderstanding.
and
Thank you for coming.
it's, town meeting's really important because of these things.
Please attend them, please.
Yeah.
So I believe we have a motion.
What was the motion? To close the public hearing? Is it seconded?
You second?
A second?
Okay,
You're the chair.
Dennis, I,
Wait, this is just to close the public hearing.
yeah, we have 2 votes. Dennis, I.
Brian, I.
Bill, on.
Bill,
That guy.
Now we can discuss the
Yep.
decision.
Yep.
What are some concerns you have?
So, in the decisions, I think we need to incorporate that condition with the pine tree, so we need to add that. But then if we can look at paragraph 12, B12. If you look under C, section C, decisions, and then paragraph 12, page 6. I don't have the plan in front of me, but is there an emergency driveway?
No.
No. So that whole paragraph's gotta go.
Yes. Which one?
Yes, through the chair, I think this is language that was held over from another decision. We do not have an emergency access.
All right, so that's in both decisions, I believe, same paragraph.
Yep.
Correct. So that's gonna go. Does this, we'll add in the condition about the fees, the waivers addressed in here as well?
Through the chair, the waivers are captured in the development plans and stormwater management decisions. That the waivers that were requested have been granted.
So there was one, can I ask one question on that? There was one about handicap accessible. Can we go through that one? There was one that was handicap involved,
I think it was put in one handicap place over by the mailbox.
and you were looking for a waiver on that?
So our point was, if it's designated, if this is in the visitor parking area, the additional 10 spaces that are in that area.
Yeah.
The peer reviewer suggested that one of them be designated as handicap accessible, and our position was all these homes have driveways that could accommodate 2 to 4 cars. So our thought was if a visitor is coming to one of these homes, they're gonna park in the driveway, they're not gonna park in the visitor parking, which is, 10, 20, 30 feet away from the home. And so from our perspective, that handicap designated space was never realistically going to be used. And then anyone who's actually going to be using the visitor parking area who doesn't have accessible tags would be prohibited from parking that space. So it would essentially just be a space that never gets used. That was our thought. That's why we requested. We thought it was unnecessary, given that we're gonna have 5 driveways 5 different driveways that are all right next to the door that somebody would use versus the one accessible space, which is, 10 to 20 feet away from the door.
So this would be one that you'd need handicap placards or license plate to use. I would not be, that's one that I would not wanna waive. I don't know what the rest of the board's opinion is on that. I know people with handicap placards that need to park closer, need to park, if there's more than one person in a family that has a handicap placard, or 2, or sometimes 3, then that driveway is not gonna be accessible. And if our peer review is recommending it, this one board member feels like we need to put that back in.
I don't disagree with your sentiment at all, but I think the applicant's position is that if you're coming to visit these people, anyone that lives there, there's a driveway, and they can move their cars out and do whatever they need to. If this is a shopping mall where there's gonna be a lot of people and there's a wide parking lot, and we wanna make sure that we get handicapped people to the closest possible place, but I think practically speaking, if anyone does have a handicap or anything, a disability of any kind, their family or whomever they're gonna visit, it's gonna let them park in the driveway. So I agree with your sentiment. I just think on a practical level, it's probably gonna work the way the applicants tell me.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Having a handicap plate myself. My sister up saying, hey, park in your front door. Instead of, I gotta go over there to park. Especially with the wheelchair or anything like that, you wanna be the closest. That huge there, I don't know who would use that. I'm in agreement with you. Because you're gonna have 3 spots already in that driveway. And at some point, can the condo association designate something down the road if they see, that they need one?
Through the chair, they certainly could. Our thought is, if you require it now, it's there, it'll always be there. And I don't know that space would ever get used, because I can't fathom somebody who would need it because they've got accessible tags, having to park there versus the driveway of the person that they're visiting. So in reality, we'll end up having a visitor's parking area where one of the spaces just never gets used.
But you can keep it as a regular parking spot.
Right, what we're asking
Not
for
eliminating
is
it.
for the board's
Okay.
decision.
The condo association could get at it if they deceive.
Sure, the condo association could self-impose that if they want to, absolutely.
Okay,
That help at all, Phil?
Nick,
I'll go along. Good, Nick.
Are you asking me to comment on the handicap?
yeah,
I would agree. I mean, if I had a handicapped person coming to my house, I would make accommodations for them to access my driveway.
yeah, I'm sorry, I need to
Yeah.
think about this.
Yep.
I've, tonight said I don't want to use this table as a bully pulpit, and I usually don't. This is not easy for me to say. I'm handicapped. I need to park near a door. I do not like the idea, philosophically and ethically, of taking away a handicap spot. Practically, what everyone has said tonight about access is correct. Philosophically, I'm in agreement with you. I think, I know we're at the last minute here. I think language could be structured within the homeowners association to state that this handicap parking spot can be used at a future date based on the need of the residents in the area. I don't like the idea of permanently removing it. And I apologize for having to bring in personal experience, but I wouldn't be, doing justice to, there's people I know that have, significant heart concerns. That, I deal with, on a weekly basis. So I think a compromise could be put language in there. That is, it is temporarily removed until the need is warranted by the homeowners
That's
association.
fine. We'll put that in.
So, phrase, so what's the mechanism?
What would happen? Does someone have a question? Rob?
Here, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Mind if I just step in for a second, Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
So with this being residential, our residential use, I should say, I don't believe that it is required to have an ADA space, which, matter of fact, I think Tim is on, and I don't know, Tim, if you could verify that, but furthermore, oh, Tim, I think you just unmuted, so.
Yeah, so, when you're creating public parking, okay? Visitor parking, public parking, I believe, up to 26 spaces, you're required to have one.
Correct.
Okay. Correct. All right. So my understanding is yes, with 26 spaces, I just didn't know if it was the use. But one thing just to note with, if there is an ADA space, you can't just demarcate an ADA space. There needs to be an accessible route from that space as well. So, I am not entirely sure if that is actually proposed with this application. I believe that there are transition ramps on the sidewalk. I'd have to double check the grades, but if it's required, I don't know if it would need to be, if it should be waived. However, I think that, I would just want verification from the applicant that they can even make the sidewalks accessible for these units.
Rob, let me ask a question. So if you had somebody in a handicapped van, for example, and you could unload a wheelchair in one of those visitor parking places, and you could ride the wheelchair around the cul-de-sac to one of those houses, that would do it. Right? I mean,
correct.
That's putting sidewalks in, we're talking having. I mean, that was my concern. And I come from a position where I got family members, younger brothers in a wheelchair. So that's where I'm coming from.
But why in the world would anyone drop somebody off not at the property? It's not a store. It's not like this is the only spot, we gotta take it. This is so-and-so, we're going to so-and-so's house and they have a driveway. We're not constructing stores where there's public parking and you're competing for that. These are homes. I just don't, I completely agree with the sentiment. I just think it's probably slightly unnecessary because these are homes and they have driveways. And anyone coming to visit them that has these needs gonna park in the driveway. We have space for them already. We don't need an extra space that's not gonna be used.
Here's my concern. We don't, the requirement is every 27 spaces. Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, that is correct. You know, it's not that easy too, as Rob was saying. The
Correct.
parking area itself
Has to be wider.
has to be a minimum slope, you know,
Yep.
nothing, I think 1 in 8, it has to meet as well. So I don't know if maybe they can't meet that criteria, but yeah, I'd have to look and see if residential, it would be included in that handicap requirement. I'd have to look at the AAB book. It's not, it's not national, it's AAB in Massachusetts, so.
Tim, are we able to waive that?
No, it's the AAB. He has to make, they would have to make application. You are not able to waive it if it's required. It's a committee that does it.
Through the chair, where this came up was from the peer reviewer looking at our plan, suggested it. They weren't necessarily stating that it's required, and that's not clear to me because I know in certain multifamilies and certainly anything that's open for public use, like a shopping center or anything like that, you certainly have to provide accessible space and accessible route. You know, a small townhome community that is opting to have visitor spaces beyond their own driveways, I don't know that it's required, but what I would suggest is what we're asking for is essentially a waiver from what the peer reviewer asked that we do. But to the building commissioner's point, if it's required when he's looking at our plan for code compliance, we're gonna have to do it. So what I would ask is, whatever the board wants to do, the board wants to do, but our position was, if it's part of a special permit, if we've got a space that sits there and never gets used, someone's gonna have to come back and amend the special permit in the future to address that situation, rather than just go to the building commissioner and say, look, it doesn't apply and it's never used, don't need to do it. The chairman's suggestion that this be left where you require it, but that it could later be something that the homeowners association could leave for open access and not for handicap access only might be the solution. It would allow us to work with the building commissioner now and in the future and not have this be baked into a special permit decision that can only be changed through an amendment and hearing process.
I'd be positive towards that if you recommend some quick phrase that we could throw in there. To me, that sounds reasonable. If you guys are reasonable to it. We can't waive it. The building commissioner's gonna not be able to waive
Yeah,
it, so.
if the applicant is agreeing, fine.
State building code, you gotta put it in, so we'll know that.
I think dealing
I
with
think
the
that's it. But we're not waiving.
association.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
appropriate? Rob?
Did you just call on me? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if I would suggest just removing that, if the applicant is amenable to it, I would just remove that waiver request and perhaps we can just put, I don't even think it needs to be a condition of approval because what the applicant just mentioned is indeed correct, you know, if, you know, when Tim does his code compliance review.
It's part of my review, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's not really part of the site plan review. I mean, it is part of it but this is kind of a gray area with this being a residential development, so.
So maybe just a quick statement that we're not waiving the handicapped ADA.
We can't. I guess the short version.
Put that right in there
We
because
can't-
the rest of it refers to the plan. But
Yeah, we can't waive state law or federal law.
You can't waive it anyway.
And
right?
Tim's gonna do it, so I don't even think we need to talk about it. Yeah. It was something that brought up by the peer reviewer. Let's just not talk about it. If it's required, they're gonna have to do it anyway, so.
I agree with that. I don't think
I think
that
that's.
yeah, you're not painting yourself into a corner for, the applicant isn't and neither is the board, so.
We know
In my
Tim's on
opinion.
it, so.
The only one that can waive it is the AAB, and they would have to make, if it's required, they would have to make application to the AAB, go to a hearing, and then, plead their case, and they would make the decision if it's required. So we'll handle that when it comes in front of us.
This will take care of itself.
Okay. Any other way?
The only other suggested paragraph that we usually include, but I didn't see it in there, is just to reference that the greening and the landscaping that's in the plan will be preserved in perpetuity. So we don't have these nice bushes out front and then 6 years from now, they're all cut down or they fall down and they're not replaced. So
Die from salt.
salts.
Yeah.
Dennis driving into.
Yeah. Me running them over.
So that would be the only other suggested change.
I'm trying to do this based on what he just said. That condition would not apply to your property. You would be
I know.
You would be responsible.
Yep, nope.
No, I'm sorry, I just have.
Nope, I understand.
Devil's in the details.
Yep, that was understood from the start.
Don't we do that with them that town? No, we wait till it's nursing home. You want to raise that question? I'll answer. to everybody.
Not a big deal. Applicant and owner, Northborough, should a document like this be formal and spell it properly?
So having grown up and lived in Northborough for decades, it's spelled both ways.
It's just like Foxford.
Yeah, it is.
And Westboro.
Yeah.
Southborough.
Would the applicant agree with that?
Yes, but not Marlboro. They do not
They get
spell.
upset.
No, no, I get very upset.
Absolutely not.
No, sorry.
So,
So I think in summary, then it's strike strike most of or all of paragraph 12 in both decisions. Add in the proposed language that the applicant had sent to us in an email about the screening for the trees and tweak it, I think, right? We might have to tweak it a little bit. We won't address the waiver for the ADA spot and I would suggest we add in that paragraph saying that the screening and landscaping will be preserved.
Can I ask one more question? The trailer sitting on the property, where's that going?
Your house.
No. House, what, can we, is there a plan to move that
Be removed and properly disposed of
within what time period?
whenever he gets going on construction, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna be there when the development's done.
Within the next 6 months?
He probably has the right to keep it there. I would think, I would probably weigh in, but I think he probably has the right to keep it there. As ugly as it may be.
Entertain a motion.
Hearing coming up, so
Well, I understand.
we're going, we keep going, keep moving. We're almost there
entertain a motion
to,
for the decision as written,
Or as amended?
as
as
amended.
amended.
Excuse me, while we were writing.
So was that you? Or was that?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
We usually do them one at a time.
I will do one at a time.
Gotcha.
Sure.
First one is to approve the North and Blackstone Street Townhouse Special Residential Use Townhouse Dwelling Development Plan Stormwater Management Decision as amended.
Second, or so, or Phil, second.
All in favor?
Dennis, aye.
Brian,
Bill, aye.
Nick,
That motion passes unanimously. Also entertain a motion to approve the North and Blackstone Townhouse Special Residential Use Townhouse Dwelling Special Permit Decision as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Dennis, aye.
Brian,
Bill, aye.
Nick,
That motion passes unanimously. Someone, thank you. For the public, thank you very much for dealing with this. It's been a long process. We appreciate everything, the public,
I
and
wish you two the best of luck.
best of luck.
Sorry, we
Sure, I
can't.
apologize, we don't have any remedies.
Wish we did.
Who do I reach out to? I'm sorry, for follow-up.
I believe, it's a decision between you and the applicant.
So I have nothing in writing.
You'll have a decision.
You'll have a decision.
Yeah, so it's all right.
And then during construction, they'll coordinate with you.
Okay, so can I get your contact information? Because I'm sure that eventually the attorney's gonna be gone. I just want to be sure.
Yeah, well, no, the decision goes to Amy, that you go to the town clerk, it
And
gets
they'll
posted,
copy it.
and then you can get a copy of
Feel
it.
period, and then once it takes effect, they. Done deal. It's legal.
I can't thank you enough.
Thank you all.
Can't thank the public.
Thank you.
Rod.
Yes.
If you developed it.
Yep.
In Medfield Center, that those houses.
I know, that was, it might have been another one. That was a big one.
No.
Is that okay?
Yeah. We'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, hold on for one moment, I'll take on, thank you. Out of order just a bit. WS. You guys need to wake you up back there.
No, we'll wait. We weren't aware we were actually needed.
We have an A and R plan. Can you bring us up to speed on that, Amy?
We have an A and R plan that was presented or and timestamped, and we need to act on that.
So I spoke to Jim on the phone, and he said that there is adequate frontage and the other thing that we need to. What's the factor? Adequate frontage and. Yeah, so everything was, from a technical point of view, was sufficient, and this is an approval not required, so. As long as they hit the two factors, there's no real discretion. In the interest of time.
I would entertain a motion
Do it endorse.
or endorse.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, Nick.
Call for the vote. You ready?
Dennis went to the menu.
Well, I'll come back to him in a second.
We can approve it for.
Yes, we can, for the before.
Ryan,
Bill,
Bill,
Nick,
Could we, before Dennis comes back, 2 minutes, do you mind signing it? Or do
No,
you want to wait?
that'll-
till after?
yeah, that'll-
And that way we
give
can,
him time to come
you
in.
can take it with you.
Long as you brought pens.
And they're there.
I have a Sharpie. Do you want a Sharpie? All right.
Presidential
signing.
Making a joke, sorry, that, she's got it.
Changing this. Yep. Oh, perfect, thank you.
How many spots in? I didn't keep one thing in.
Yes. Come on.
They didn't do that when I went to school.
No? No, I have a whole bookshelf full of them.
What's the difference in age between you and I? This is an Asian joke.
That was a 5-0 vote, sir.
Like.
Adequate frontage and adequate access. Both of words. Virgin.
Yeah.
Into man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I won't tell you.
That's right.
Might be disappointed.
Don't break, no.
Just tell me.
Buy your Super Bowl tickets now. Bill.
He knows, doesn't he?
I don't.
No, we got it. Next up.
What's that?
Right, all, thank you, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, gee, Bill, it's not that easy to do.
Okay. You don't think I knew that?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm a risk manager.
Yeah, well, we'll get our DPW to look at it.
Maybe we,
We have maintenance look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
public hearing on Maple Street, assessors map 37, lot 36 and 38. Is that correct?
Yes.
We need to open the public hearing. Brian, can you read the motion, please?
Maple Street Assessors Map 37, Lot 3 and 3A. The applicant and the owner of Maple Street Development LLC, NERG LLC is seeking under the town of Bellingham zoning bylaws. Chapter 240, section 240-16, development plan approval, section 240-54, stormwater management and site plan approval to propose to construct an industrial trades building, 19,525 square foot for 2 lease units each, 9,762 square feet located south of 495 and on the western side of Maple Street in Bellingham, approximately 7.2 acres of land shown on our assessor's map. 37 lot 3 and 3A zoned industrial. The plans were prepared by Independence Engineering LLC, 161 East Grove Street, Suite 3, Middleborough, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Applicant here? You state your name for the record?
Brian Fox from Eric O'Connell here on behalf of the applicant and property owner Maple Street Development LLC.
Just to be transparent, I have no relationship with the firm. Can you give us an overview of what you do?
Sure, so I just want to introduce, this is Shane Oates from Independence Engineering and our.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, my pleasure. He enjoyed the show. And our principal from Maple Street Development, Rich Gordon, is visiting by Zoom. He hoped to be here, but he had to be remote tonight.
Mr. Gordon, thank you for participating.
So as was mentioned, we're seeking site plan approval and a stormwater permit for a new industrial trades building. As was mentioned, this is map 37, parcels 3 and 3A. We're in the industrial zoning district. This is the vacant parcel that borders 495 on Maple Street, just south of the Maple Street overpass. So directly behind us is the Amazon warehouse. And directly across the street is J. Brian Day and Camp Bow Wow. So this is the triangular shaped parcel right at the corner of 495 and Maple Street.
This is a unit that's been used to just store random stuff over time.
Yeah, the previous property owner owned a landscape company. We were actually in front of the board with them in July of last year, so they've since sold the property.
Okay.
This is the new owner as of last year.
Okay.
Looking to develop this as we mentioned, industrial trades building, 19,000 square feet, 2 units that would be leased. So just for perspective, this is significantly smaller than some of the other buildings in this area, and it's being designed as a trades building with bay doors and intended for any number of types of users who would use this kind of building. There's a similar building across the street at 260 Maple Street, sort of a multi-use general building in the industrial district. So Mr. Gordon has experience with these types of buildings. He operates Hopkins Brook in Holliston. And there is a market for this type of use. We've had a number of potential tenants kick the tires on this. Nothing specific, but just to give you a sense of granite companies, plumbers, those types of commercial users are looking for this size space, a smaller size industrial space in the area. The site design complies with the dimensional requirements of the zoning bylaw. We're providing 39 parking spaces. That's what's required for an industrial building of this square footage. And Mr. Oates has been before the Conservation Commission. This project also requires an order of conditions, and he can update you on that. That's my brief summary. I just want to turn things over to Shane just to sort of walk you through the site plan and what we're doing.
Good evening.
Let me know how I shared it. Is it rolled up?
Yep, it's up.
Yep.
Well, that's going on. So just to update the board, we had our second conservation hearing last evening. We are basically done with them. They're drafting an order of conditions. We had a site walk last month, so next meeting, I think, is on the 8th. So we'll be reviewing an order of conditions with them, just to give the board an update.
Just waiting for a screen share. So you can see.
Pam, could you let him share his screen?
That, excuse me, that laptop is all set to
Okay,
share.
all set.
Be at the bottom.
Should be all set. I think Amanda just used to.
Zoom is asking me to sign in.
Logged
Maybe it
out.
was, maybe it was.
Probably logged out.
Logged out.
Yeah.
Okay.
While we're waiting for that. One thing I've learned a lot of is very. Wording is very particular. Can you please expand on what a trade building is? It's maybe very, not a warehouse, correct?
It's not a warehouse, correct? And just so you. It's not a warehouse.
Service.
It's there for, I mean, it's a wide variety of types of users, but it's a large bay where equipment, vehicles, materials could be stored in office and operated out of. 19,000 square feet is really small and beyond too small for somebody who's looking for a true warehouse use. This is much smaller than what was discussed the first hour of this meeting tonight.
So can I?
Yeah.
What makes it different though? I mean, I'm not asking you to defend it, but knowing that you heard the first hour, what would be, and knowing that there's a bylaw coming up,
Yeah.
what makes this different? What are the facts that I could use to say this was different? If I
So
wanted
I
to
would
do
say a warehouse is, I mean, I know there was a definition before the board with a
Yeah.
zoning amendment, but a warehouse is a place purely for the temporary storage of items that are going from one place to another. That's the point. That's not what we're doing here. This is gonna be businesses operating out of here that need a large bay for their own equipment, for their materials as they come and go. This isn't a place for boxes with a certain logo to sit for a day until they get moved to their final destination. That's not what this is for.
it's more of a service business than a sell of the product. You know?
I mean, it's really more for, this is intended for trades persons to operate out of their primary headquarters. And
Thanks for letting me ask.
We spent a lot of time this evening.
all right, we're on the screen now.
Yep. Okay, so I'll go, just some cover sheets. As part of our proposal and application, we are requesting 2 waivers, traffic analysis, traffic study. And the second waiver, which is probably more important to the board for a project of this magnitude, is the parking. The required parking based on building size would be 39 spaces. And right now we are providing 27. So it's anticipated that if this was a 2 business building, maybe a half a dozen employees at any peak time, We also have an on-site septic system, which we've had to assume that number of employees, and that is based on Mr. Gordon's experience and his leasing experience with buildings of these size. I just wanted to point that out because that's on our legend sheet is the parking count. So this is the site layout plan. So basically, we have two proposed driveways right off of Maple Street. Again, here's Maple Street. We're just to the west of Maple Street. We have two 40-foot wide driveways. Here's our building, 19,525 square feet total. We have some parking in the front. We have a couple of small loading docks for box type trucks, box size trucks, I should say. To the rear of the site, we are proposing just one-way access around the building, so you're gonna see 15 feet to the right, 15 feet out only. You see those paint markings as well. Then we have some additional parking out back with our ADA accessible spaces, so access will be through the rear of the site for those as well. Dumpster pad back there too. A couple of associated retaining walls along the perimeter. There are a little some ledge outcroppings here. So the previous proposal last summer, we were impacting a lot of ledge. This is much less, probably half as much. We believe we'll be able to just hammer that ledge up to get down to grade. Proposed granite curbing at the entry radii, precast concrete curb throughout to control our runoff. I think that's pretty much it for the layout plan. Onto our grading. So basically the site has been graded. Building elevation is at 108, which is pretty close. There is a large cleared area right here, right now, which is where the previous owner had stored some landscaping equipment. So basically the site breaks right down the middle. Building and the parking areas to the rear basically sheet flow into two catch basins. These are storm scepter catch basins, so they'll be able to treat, get our TSS removal, oils, greases, all that good stuff. Then both those go into a large recharge system. It's called Tech Chamber 280 HD. We actually can store this system right now is sized for the 100-year storm event. Goes through there. We hold back as much as we need to meet our pre and post development rates out into a drain manhole structure to control our outflow rates and into a flared end section and then out to the pre-development discharge. Towards the front of the site, again, none of the building roof runoff, all the roof runoff is proposed to go to the rear, but we have another small storm scepter catch basin here to receive sheet flow from the paved areas and go into a much smaller recharge facility. This recharge facility, again, is sized to accommodate the 100-year storm. So all captured runoff from the site will be recharged, which is we're probably 7 times the required recharge rate right now. And again, all captured runoff from paved areas will be treated with a storm scepter, and those calculations are in the drainage report as well. So we're meeting our pre and post development rates. We're following all the stormwater standards. That's in the drainage report as well. Next is the utility plan. So we have some wall packs for security type lighting. You see them here, the little black rectangles. We have 2 in the back, 2 in the front, and then 1 each on the side. Those and the wall pack cut sheets are actually on the details too as well. I mean, they may be substituted eventually, but they're LED. No light runoff, no light spillover from any of the property lines. The building will be serviced with town water. You can see here from Maple Street, we have a domestic and fire service going into a meter pit. We are getting electric service from a utility pole across from Maple Street into a transformer. And as I mentioned before, you can see this small rectangle, dash rectangle. That's the proposed septic system. It's pretty small. It's basically sized for 12 employees. And those septic designs are attached to this as well. So we'll have to get Board of Health approval for that. And then probably the last real relevant sheet is We've provided some landscaping out back, although it's not, there's no views really necessary. It's more of like a barrier for snow storage, so contractors will know that. A variety of flowering shrubs, plantings with some trees along these front islands as well, while we're trying to basically not affect our site views at all. This right here, this was a proposed highway sign, which has been removed from the project. So we just have the revised plan that we submitted to conservation just has grading down to existing grade. The slope goes down there. So that's a real quick overview. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll go back to the layout plan since that's your rule start.
What's the 10-foot side yard setback? On the right-hand side, the part that abuts the state property?
Right here. You're asking where it is shown on the
What
plan?
is it? What is that referring to? 10-foot yard setback?
Property line setback. So that's a building setback.
Okay.
Yep. So your building can't be within 10 feet. 20,
building
I think
would
it's
be-
20 front, 10 side, 10 rear.
But actually, all the landscaping and infrastructure can be.
Yes. Yeah, those are
Alright,
just
and
building setbacks. in the
What is
building.
the buffer zone from the state to that to your property there?
How far is it to the building?
Well, from where you're actually doing work.
Probably a few feet
You're
away.
doing a.
Yeah,
you're
so
doing a
basically-
massive retaining wall there. correct?
Yeah, yeah, but it'll probably be an integrated retaining wall in with the ledge. So we don't know if that will have to be designed. by
That's a big
structural
berm
engineer.
that butts the state highway
Yeah.
property,
Yeah, it's a berm, but most of it is actually ledge.
and
Yeah.
you've had no problem with the state on that. You've already talked to them what you're doing there.
We haven't talked, we haven't
All right,
gotten.
and on the left side and back here, that seems to go through that other buffer zone. The other work you're doing here, that goes actually right to the line, right?
Okay, so
Back far left
this,
corner?
yeah, I should have gone over these lines. So this outer line, which bisects our site, that's the outer riparian zone, riverfront outer riparian. This next line right here, which we really see this faint, it's a little faint. The only thing in there is a slice of the wall in the flared end section. This line that I'm tracing is the 100-foot IVW. So we basically don't have any disturbance whatsoever within the 100 feet PVW. The darker line inside of that, that's the inner riparian versus the outer riparian. So that inner riparian is a no-no. Outer riparian, you're allowed to disturb up to 10% of the total lot area. And then if we go further southwest, you can see here's our bank, here's our wetland flags, high water flags as well that we walked with Conservation Commission. So that's kind of an I have a better plan if you guys want to see the buffers. I actually have a buffers plan with color, but it's pretty easy to see on the layout. Yeah. So that's what that dark line is. It bisects the site. Yeah, it probably would be a little confusing.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Chief, you have any questions?
I do. I have a couple questions. Starting right off, I'm not excited about the only 15-foot wide path around the building. It's not adequate access for a piece of fire apparatus to get around, especially if we have to set our tower up. Our outrigger stance is 18 feet. Outrigger to outrigger on our tower. So we're not even gonna be able to set up on the side of that building. So that's a huge concern of mine. Second is swept path analysis. I want to see a swept path analysis on that 19.6 corner to the 20. Again, it's based off of our tower. We need to get access around this building completely. The other two is the entrance and exit access. I want to see swept path analysis for that, as well as turning into the front of the building. Again, everything's based off of our tower. And where is the closest hydrant for this property? And is there a hydrant in the yard within 100 feet of the FDC?
Probably not within 100 feet, I would guess.
Well, there needs to be, because that's our requirement.
Yep.
So I'm gonna be looking for that, I'm gonna be looking for that data before I'll do any approval or even more on this.
The building needs to be sprinklerized?
Jim, I would say yes, because over the square footage recommends over 7,500 square feet, so it'll need to be sprinkled. Yep.
Yep.
As well as a monitored fire alarm system.
Okay.
And then again, it'll also need to be adjusted for the use group as well, so I'm sure there'll be a basic shell upfit, and then whatever upfit from that is, will also have to be reevaluated.
Based on the tenant, correct?
Correct, tenant upfits, yes.
No, we understand that.
Yep, shell is one and tenant upfit is the other.
Yeah, I thank you. I appreciate that this is just an introduction and we'll talk about things. So on page 4, I said, I'm not an engineer, so on page 4. If you don't mind, I don't.
But the layout plan, yeah, this is 4. sheet 4.
Okay,
Yep.
so the thing in where it says limits of disturbance, proposed large block wall, block retaining wall. Is that those hatch marks, is that the wall, or what is that?
The little dash lines or these hatch marks right here.
Those ones,
This is the edge of ledge.
ledge.
So yeah, this is a big ledge outcropping right here.
All right, so the retaining wall is,
Right through it.
going through the.
Yeah, there'll be a small section of this area of ledge will be hammered out. Yeah. And then it'll be up to a structural engineer, since this is a cut section, whether that ledge can be utilized as a retaining wall or not, that's not my expertise. If it isn't structurally stable, you'll have to hammer out a little bit more and build an actual retaining wall.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then, sort of in the middle of the buildings.
Yep.
Straight down, it's sort of, what I would imagine is the entrance, those circular images that look like sort of a saw. Right where it says unit 1. So right, because right there, if you go.
Right here?
Go to the right,
Yeah.
those circular marks right
Oh,
there.
this and this, these are existing trees.
All right,
Yeah, it's the survey is faded back, all the survey information.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you for doing that.
yeah, sure.
all right, those are the only questions I had.
Something to add.
No, send it out to Pierre. Let's see what they say.
I have a reservation about that. With expanding the exit, are these plans gonna change, chief? Based on your desire for adequate access?
I would say yes.
Okay,
Yeah, and I'm also even looking about water supply for the back of the building as well too, and I know the water department, again, I don't want to speak for Jesse, does not like dead end systems, they like loop systems to keep the water flowing, to keep it fresh, so yes, something else that needs to be looked at.
well, I would love to start the peer review and get this going. We may be looking at different plans in a period of time. I certainly don't want to waste your time with that.
So I would say, I mean, in a worst case scenario, if the building does that, the drainage will still need to be reviewed, peer reviewed, which I think is the biggest obstacle. And it was going to be the biggest obstacle in July. At least that's what we were gonna have the peer review engineer focus on. So if we could at least get that rolling, that might be helpful, because I don't know that would change a little bit, but not a lot, not the design intent by any means. You know, at the end of the day, if anything shrinks, the size of those chambers shrinks, that's all. I would just like to get them on board with our drainage design.
Okay.
plans. Yeah.
Rob, you have a comment?
I do. So just first of all, Shane, thank you for the presentation. That was pretty helpful. Just question. I remember back in July, I think it was July when you were last here, or whenever it was for the previous application. One of the discussion items was regarding your drainage system. I recall that you had soil testing along the front of the site, and that included some test pits for your septic system. And then I think it looks like it probably encompasses the front Coltech system. Did you conduct any soil testing for the rear of the property where your big system is going?
We didn't, and that is on our list, our to-do list as well. So when I was out there, the first time I was out there doing soils was 2020. It's been a while. This is the area where we started for septic, because the building was originally going to be up front near Maple Street. So we did some soils there very similar to the soils that are at the front. So we absolutely have that on our list that we're going to need to do probably 2 or 3 holes in that rear system. Yep.
Yeah, so and I would highly recommend doing those test pits, even now that, we aren't really dealing with frozen conditions now, the weather's getting nice.
Yep.
I'd highly recommend doing those soil tests, the confirmatory ones, prior to doing the peer review. I mean, I think we can start to get the ball rolling on the town's end for the stormwater peer review, or at least looking for the scope, but I really think that that is a very, very large chunk of information that the peer reviewer is going to need to see in order to confirm that the system is designed and sized properly. So that would be my recommendation to the board and to the applicant to just, I would highly recommend getting those test pits conducted sooner rather than later. So the peer review isn't going to be delayed.
Rob, is there a chance that there's ledge in those stormwater areas?
So that was my concern initially with the previous application. Now, I do recall, Shane, I think that your system encroached more into the ledge.
They most certainly did, yeah. So this is why when I was redesigning this grading and drainage, I went in areas where I knew I could dig a hole. So,
Gotcha. And I think,
learn type thing, yeah.
yeah. Now, with that being said, I know subsurface conditions can vary. If there's ledge outcrop, there's probably there's definitely ledge underground. We just don't know how deep it is.
Right.
So, that Phil, to your point, that is my biggest concern, is that, you start scraping into that hill and, you're hitting ledge at, 2 feet below the ground surface. Now we got a problem because now there's going to be a serious redesign. So I guess that's basically the crux of my suggestion here. And then one other item too, that I think this came up from the previous application as well. Shane, I know that where that rear radius going around the building next to 495,
Yeah.
it looks like that wall is extremely close to that property line. How thick is that wall shown on your plan?
So the wall, what I used this time, because last time it was just a thick polyline, we used 24 inches to start with.
Okay.
So that's a beefy size. And again, if we can utilize the ledge outcropping, we will. Obviously, as we get to this radius here, there is no ledge outcropping. So that'll have to be a constructed wall. But yeah, what I tried to do was hold 2 feet off the property line to the back of any wall and then 2 feet to the face to give a little
Gotcha.
construction tolerance. Yeah.
And if I recall, well, actually, I can see it on your plan here. It looks like the wall in that area is pretty steep. What do we got?
Yeah, this area right here. So, I mean, obviously we start at grade 7 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, 10, then back to 10, and then to grade. So around 15, it's at its steepest.
So in that corner where it's approximately 15 feet, I know that there's plenty of different wall designs out there, and I feel like that market just keeps changing, but typically with a wall that height, there's usually some type of geotextile fabric that they use to armor that, and it looks like you're only a couple feet off of that property line. So
yeah,
that's something that I would also highly recommend being looked at, because if you have to construct with some type of mesh behind that, now you're talking about an easement into a DOT right of way, which, good luck with that.
Yeah.
We're not
So
going there.
no, I would agree with you on that.
Discretion's a better part of valor.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be able to use any of the GeoWeb or geotextiles type stuff. More, pins and rods type wall.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah.
You already talked, Rob.
What was that?
You already talked.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that.
But as,
Where's the Rolls Royce?
Rob, as we're looking at the sweeping movements for the truck template, like if there's something to budge, that would be the area to budge in my mind. So
Sure. Yeah, no,
I'll make sure we keep that at the top of the list.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
these are
those
just
things over.
suggestions
Yeah.
that, you know, the major ones that I see could affect, you know, site design and, you know, I'd rather, you know, let's get ahead of it now rather than, you know, and, you know, whenever the peer review comes back.
Sure.
Perfect. And then just my last thing, it looks like, I know that the building design has changed a bit too since the previous application.
Yeah.
It looks like, so you have overhead doors in the front, and then also, are those?
So these are overhead doors meant for like, obviously a box truck, you're not fitting anything bigger in there with the 90-degree turn. These are truck docks, small truck docks, obviously. And then out back here, these are just overhead doors.
Okay.
To the rear. Yeah.
All right, because I know, and can you go back to the site layout really quickly, if you don't mind?
I did. No, I went the wrong way. I went
That's
up.
utility plan, yeah. There we go, all right. So you have 24-foot width from those back parking spaces right to the face of the wall.
Yep.
And 30 feet from the parking spaces to the wall in the front.
Yep.
If it's possible, I think it would be helpful to extend that a little bit. You know, if you could put, you know, even a 5-foot strip in front of those doors just to give, you know, vehicles backing up a little bit of egress from the building. You're probably also going to want some building protection with bollards.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah,
there's
we have some at the corners, but we could also put them at the doors as well. The overhead doors and the truck doors.
And if there's any manway doors as well, some pedestrian refuge. So, you know, a 5-foot striped aisle would be helpful.
Sure.
So,
Sean, would it be a fire lane in front of that at all anyway? Would there be a fire lane anywhere in front of that building?
We're not proposing one, no.
I'd like to see if you could squeeze one in there somewhere, because you're leaving us literally no access at all. It's gonna be blocked up, especially if you have trucks in there.
Yeah.
We're gonna have no way to get around or get through the front of that building.
Okay.
it is.
They can
It
be
is
one and the
pretty
same,
tight.
obviously, the striping and the fire lane. Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
circulation is definitely tight around this proposed layout. So it's just something that I think once that truck turn template is in, and yeah, public safety definitely needs to be comfortable with this. So that's all I have. So I will stop
you.
talking now.
I had a quick question, if I could.
Yes, sir.
Certainly.
Is there a photometric plan? Did I miss that?
No, these are, I think in the detail cut sheet, there's some photometrics, but it's not on the site plan itself.
You get that for us.
Yeah, we can just we can take these, what we're specking out right now and put it right on the plan. It's easy.
Perfect.
Able that address what you want?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask a question just before I forget it? So then I don't forget it. Just from a traffic point of view, given that you come over 495 and it's right there.
Yeah, sight line.
Yeah, so the sight line and someone to look at that for us. And people going the other way, taking a left, and the car comes over 495.
Yeah, on that northern entrance. Yep.
We can do, we've done some pretty basic sightline analysis based on topography. We could just do that, create a plan, like a profile plan for you.
Yeah, something more than basic though, because that sneaks up on you. And then 2 points on aesthetics. We go to great pains to either hide these buildings and structures, or if we can't hide them, to put all the ugly parts in the back.
Yep.
So to the extent that the loading, the truck areas can be relocated behind the building, so we don't see trucks and we don't see the loading docks. That would be something that we've historically prioritized. Secondly, along 495, we've asked the other applicants that come before us to screen. I understand that there's state property to the highway, but we don't want to see your building, is basically the short version. And I know this plan doesn't really allow for too much of screening.
Yeah, there could be some screening like towards the front near Maple Street. But as you get towards that wall, now you're sitting down pretty significantly, so.
So whatever you can do
Yeah.
to hide the building from Maple Street and from 495 and put the ugly parts in the back. And if you can make that happen.
Be honest, hide it from Bellingham.
I was asked the same question to one of us.
Yeah, so I mean, that would probably that would be very difficult, just given the shape of the building and the site. The reason we wanted to put them here, because it's just pull in, pull out. You know, we can talk with the client a little bit about it, but this is definitely the path of least resistance and the easiest for traffic and stuff like that.
With the building setback quite a bit more than setbacks required from Maple Street, we've got more opportunities for screening in the front, so that might be the solution here, provided we have the appropriate sightlines.
The only problem is those bays or docks are directly in front of the exits.
Yeah, they're always, we're 75 feet back. You know, and the front building setback's 20, so. You know, I hear what you're saying, but it is a good ways back. I'm guessing, I think we have some trees out front here too. We can maybe look at the screenings, you know, a little bit more too, so.
Yeah.
But I'll talk with the client and see.
Yeah, that is something we've historically prioritized and any screening put in, just put mature trees.
Yeah.
We've learned that lesson hard.
Okay.
I asked the sentiments about the back ideally.
Yeah.
We can accomplish that. I can't recall, did the electrical have them in the back of the building? It doesn't, I can't recall. Do you remember? I thought they did.
Okay.
And one last question from me for this evening. Can box trucks be stored here inside the building at night?
I would imagine they could, yeah. There's probably gonna be a space where these 12-foot high doors, you can pull box trucks inside. So you have to be taken, you know, care of appropriately. You need the appropriate drains and traps. And
Yes,
everything.
and safety equipment.
Yep.
That's all the questions I have for right now. So where do we stand with getting, go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything. I was just gonna suggest, so, you know, I can at least, for a discussion, like we can get out there and do soils testing relatively quickly. I'm fairly confident what we'll find. Maybe if in the meantime, we could at least get proposals from your peer review consultants to look at. I know, you know, just from last time I was here, it took a few weeks to get back. So if we could maybe get that started, if nothing else.
Can we start an outline of what is the proper terminology we use? A request for proposal from them? And we'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I think we have not a lot of work, we have some work to do.
Yeah.
Realizing the peer reviews are, you've heard this evening, are very difficult to get a hold of. What time frame realistically are you looking at?
I'm not sure how to answer that.
I mean, the client's always gonna say, yesterday, or as soon as possible. I think realistically, he's got, summer in mind to be able to get started on things, so. I don't know if that's realistic in terms of getting peer review turned around, and we've got a fairly limited scope, I think, of peer review.
That's okay, yeah.
We're not looking at traffic, it's, you know, the stormwater, the civil review, I don't think it's a real heavy lift for the size of the site and the size of the building.
What's your thought on May 23rd?
I would think we would like to do that. I think we're busy in the night. I think we can cap things off on the 23rd. And then, decision deadline.
I'll have to check on that. I don't. I'm
Okay,
not sure what
we'll
that-
advise you.
Okay.
We need to move the decision deadline.
Rob, does that seem, 23rd seem practical to you?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, I'm not sure if, I imagine we'd probably get peer review back, but I don't know if, you know, if the applicant will have adequate time to address any peer review by then. But I mean, even if it has to get continued, we'll get it continued. And then one other item too, I know, you know, the applicant's requesting that waiver for the traffic study, which that's up to the board to waive that. I would just say that if you're requesting the waiver, for the next meeting, it would probably be helpful to have at the least, that information regarding the sight lines. I would think. So I don't know if the applicant would be is able to get that done in that time frame. That's possible.
So would you feel more comfortable with the 13th of June?
Well, I mean, I think,
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
I didn't know if you were talking to me.
I'm talking about,
I think the 23rd is realistic,
okay,
somewhat, a little less than a month from now, so
okay,
I think I know what to prioritize. So,
okay.
And
I
if
sense you
we're-
have a decent working relationship with the applicant. And you will move it forward.
yeah, of course.
Okay.
And if worse comes to worse, if for some reason the 23rd doesn't work, just, you know, we can, you know, request a continuance for the first meeting in June and we can, you know, move forward there.
Okay. So just bear in mind, we have one meeting in July and one meeting in August.
Yeah.
I just want to be aware of our schedule.
That's everywhere.
Okay.
Of course.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
So, Jeff Prescott, 314 Maple Street, just wanted to ask,
You, how close are you?
how close am I?
Are you a neighbor?
Like 4/10 of a mile on the left,
Okay, thank you.
right across from High Street.
Thank you for coming.
Just a question on tree removal and scenic road
Mhm.
for the entrance and the exit.
Yeah.
How many trees and,
Okay,
so I noticed you've got 3 trees on the
Right.
plans to be removed, but how, you know, that's quite a bit of woods along the roadway right there, so.
yeah. I know we have an inventory somewhere from 2020, so I'll have to find that.
Is there any stone walls or anything along there?
No. No, I've been on this site a lot, no, no stone. Just the ledge.
That's not historical. So you ever think of any historical nature there?
Not right there,
Okay,
not that I know of.
I know we've seen odd things on Maple Street.
Well, I know there was the one historical part of where Amazon is,
Correct.
which I don't know whatever happened to that.
It's been preserved,
Yeah, it's been preserved.
and we have the instead further down Maple Street. Any other questions, chief?
I'm all set for now, thank you.
And you can work in concert with one another?
Oh, yes.
What's the next, you need a motion to? We continue to, the 23rd, so. Yes.
I'll second, Nick.
Any other discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Vote, is that what we're doing?
Yes.
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 Sorry to bother you, Steve.
Enough to plan it for a minute. That aside. Right.
Bill on.
Bill.
Nick, aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
Very nice.
Of the month. Brian,
Brian, it's you.
thank you very much, Sherman.
Thank you.
Thank you. I recommend we skip over the minutes. Yeah. Do we have to
No, they're not on.
Oh,
Next appointment.
That's in your plan and everything.
Well, you're fine. Yes.
Second that next.
Okay. And call for vote?
That's aye.
Bill,
Check back.
No problem, thank you.
Night, Bellingham.